Chapter 864. Therefore, the only target you can choose to attack is Saint Juan-Ti. Firstly, although the two sages of the West seem powerful, they are not on the same side as us Panga gods. They are rootless duckweeds in the primordial world and are not accepted by everyone. Even if they suffer losses, no one will stand up for them. Secondly, Saint Juan-Ti is the weakest. Only by attacking him will you have a higher chance of success. Thirdly, which is also the most important point, among the 6 sages, only Saint Juan-Ti's incarnation often appears in the 3 realms. The incarnations of the other sages rarely appear. If you want to attack, you can only find Saint Juan-Ti's incarnation. After listening to the Emperor of Fengdu's analysis, Patriarch Mingi felt that it was quite reasonable. You are right. The 2 sages of the West, as the descendants of the Chaos Demon God, not only appeared in the primordial world openly, but they also stole the position of sages. It is really hateful. If I can find a chance to kill one of their incarnations and make the West lose face, even if I can't achieve Tao, I can at least vent my anger. Patriarch Mingi was also very dissatisfied with the 2 sages of the West. After all, he was an innate saint born from Pangu's filthy blood. Although he was not an authentic Pangu, he still had Pangu's bloodline. He was innately disgusted with the descendants of the Chaos Demon God. Patriarch Mingi, who did not like the 2 sages of the West, was even more displeased after learning about their identities. That was to say, he was not strong enough. Otherwise, he would have killed his way to Mount Meru in the West. Patriarch Min was also an impatient person. After he made up his mind, he wanted to leave right away. Thank you for clearing my doubts, brother. If I have any achievements in the future, I won't forget the kindness of your guidance today. But now, the poor Wei is eager to achieve Tao, so I will go to the Nether Blood Sea to make arrangements. Coincidentally, the Nether Blood Sea is not far from the West. When the poor Wei finds a place, I will lure the incarnation of Ancestor Juan-Ti here and kill him with the Blood Sea. Seeing that the Nether River Patriarch was so anxious, the Emperor of Fengdu understood his eagerness to attain the Tao. However, he still advised, fellow Nether River Patriarch, you are too anxious. You are showing signs of entering the calamity. How could the incarnation of a saint be so easy to kill? Even if his strength is inferior to yours, is the incarnation of Saint Juan-Ti dead? Is it made of wood? Can he just watch as fellow Taoist kills his incarnation? Of course not. If the incarnation is in danger, Saint Juan-Ti will definitely sense it immediately and save it. At that time, it's not certain who will be hunting who. After listening to the Emperor of Fengdu's words, the Nether River Patriarch calmed down. He knew that he had been too anxious to attain the Tao, so much so that he could not calm his emotions. His Tao heart fluctuated too much and almost attracted the tribulation of Tao attainment. There were tribulations when one was trying to prove their Tao. Naturally, there were also tribulations when one achieved their Tao, and they were even more terrifying. This was the tribulation of destruction. The great Tao was destroyed, and the true spirit merged with the world. From then on, it existed with the world, undying and indestructible. At the same time, it would completely lose its consciousness and be assimilated by the world. Although this was not considered death, in fact, it was no different from death. Moreover, it was a complete death, the kind that could not return. The path of Tao attainment was difficult, and difficult. The slightest carelessness could lead to the risk of martyrdom. This was not just a saying. However, although the tribulation of destruction was terrifying, in fact, this tribulation was rarely triggered. The probability of 1 in 1,000 primordial chaos experts triggering it was already very high. This was a tribulation that only existed in legends. However, although the tribulation of destruction had never appeared, it did not mean that it did not exist. In this world, there were always unlucky people. If someone was unlucky, they might encounter the tribulation of destruction. Take the Nether River Patriarch for example. After missing 2 opportunities to attain the Tao in a row, he was already on the verge of death. The next time he tried to prove his Tao, he might attract the tribulation of destruction if he was not careful. At the same time, if the Nether River Patriarch still failed in his 3rd attempt to attain the Tao, Then, it would be difficult for him to attain the Tao in this life. Because the fourth time he attained the Tao, he would definitely trigger the tribulation of destruction. The first time he attained the Tao, there was almost no possibility of triggering the tribulation of destruction. However, the second time he attained the Tao, he might encounter it. The third time, he could clearly sense the tribulation of destruction. The fourth time, he was destined to trigger the tribulation of destruction. The more times he failed to attain the Tao, the greater the possibility of triggering the tribulation of destruction. The Nether River Patriarch really had no way out. If he could not attain the Tao this time, he would not be able to attain the Tao in this life. Therefore, he was abnormally anxious. However, it was also because of this that he should be calmer. Every time there was a major event, he needed to be calm. After calming down, the Nether River Patriarch thanked the Emperor of Fengdu. "Thank you for the reminder, Taoist brother." It was the poor Wei who lost her composure. But how should we deal with Saint Xuanti? The poor Wei is no match for him at all. Moreover, among the people the poor Wei knows, the only one who can stop Saint Xuanti is Goddess Hoodoo. It seems that I have to ask Goddess Hoodoo for help. I just don't know if she is willing to help. Thinking of Saint Xuanti, the Nether River Patriarch felt a headache because he was really no match for him. If not for the Netherworld Blood Sea, he would have been killed in a single blow. Hearing that the Nether River Patriarch wanted to ask Goddess Hoodoo for help, the Emperor of Fengdu could not help but shake his head. If the Nether River Patriarch really gave up his pride and asked Goddess Hoodoo for help, Goddess Hoodoo would most likely agree. However, it was definitely not now. At the moment, Dijiang had just returned, and Goddess Hoodoo's main energy had to be placed on him. Only after Dijiang's strength recovered would he be able to help the Nether River Patriarch. However, that would be many years later. The Nether River Patriarch might not be able to wait. Moreover, when that time came, he might not need Goddess Hoodoo's help. With a mysterious smile, the Emperor of Fengdu said, "Fellow Taoist Nether River, don't be impatient. The poor Wei predicted that within 10,000 years, there will be an unprecedented change in the Western sect. At that time, your chance will come." The Nether River Patriarch was puzzled and asked, "What change?" The Emperor of Fengdu shook his head and said, "The secrets of heaven cannot be revealed." While the Nether River Patriarch and the Emperor of Fengdu were discussing, the Central Divine Prefecture of the 5 great continents welcomed an unprecedented change. It was the reincarnation of a great divine power that had descended. Boom! 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 Almost every once in a while, the destiny of the Central Divine Prefecture would shake, causing the fixed future to change. At the same time, every time the destiny of the Central Divine Prefecture shook, the rest of the destiny in the world would gather towards this place. Later on, the destiny of the 3 realms all gathered in the Central Divine Prefecture. Not only that, even the various famous mountains, rivers, grotto heavens, and blessed lands that had long moved away from the ground and escaped into the depths of the void, which were the dojos of the great divine power, also separated a wisp of destiny and gathered in the Central Divine Prefecture. At this moment, the destiny of the Central Divine Prefecture could be said to be the highest in the 3 realms. Even the heavenly court could not compare to it. Such a huge amount of destiny also caused an unknown change in the Central Divine Prefecture. Its future became chaotic, and no one could see through it. Under the gathering of destiny, countless people with great destiny, heroes, and heroes were born. There were many heroes, and no one was willing to submit to the others. Naturally, countless troubles were born. In just a few short decades, several countries in the Central Divine Prefecture were destroyed, and dynasties changed. That's right. Feng Zichen still used the feudal system to rule the country. Under the Human Tao Imperial Court, there were hundreds of thousands of vassal states of various sizes. These states varied in size. Although they all had their own systems, the Human Tao Imperial Court reigned supreme. All of them had to follow the orders of the Human Tao Imperial Court and submit to the jurisdiction of the Human Tao Imperial Court. Every 100 years, they even had to offer offerings to the Human Tao Imperial Court. Of course, in reality, the Human Tao Imperial Court rarely interfered in the internal affairs of these vassal states. Most of the time, they were autonomous. Unless they really could not stand it anymore, for example, when the ruler of a vassal state caused the people to be angry and the human Tao imperial court noticed, the human Tao imperial court would intervene, depose the ruler, and appoint a better ruler. Although the feudal system was outdated, in the current environment, it was the best choice. Who did not want to be the human emperor? It could be said that every human had the dream of becoming the human emperor. They wanted to become the human emperor of the generation and command the primeval land and all the races in the universe. Feng Zichen was very supportive of the idea of his clansmen. After all, only with ambition would there be motivation. Only then would the clansmen be forced to work harder in cultivation. If the path to advancement was blocked, the clansmen would lose their future. Then, they would lose the motivation to cultivate. The entire race would appear lifeless. In this way, the race would not be far from decline. Making a name for oneself and accomplishing great deeds was the nature of the human race. Any force that dared to suppress the nature of the clansmen would be crushed by the angry clansmen and become the dust of history. Feng Zichen naturally did not want to see this happen. Therefore, in the early days of his rule, he did not choose a centralized system. Instead, he used a more ancient feudal system. Of course, Feng Zichen also made some changes to the so-called feudal system. He created 5 new noble titles under the human king. From high to low, they were Duke, Marquis, Count, Viscount, and Baron. These 5 noble titles could not be conferred unless one had made great contributions. Those with noble titles were the dukes of the human race. Only dukes were qualified to establish a country. Among them, the country established by a baron was the smallest. It was a small country. The country established by a viscount was a viscount. The country established by a count was a count. The country established by a marquis was a marquis. The country established by a duke was a dukedom. Above the duke was the human king. The human king did not need to establish a country because they themselves had supreme power to assist the human emperor in ruling all races. If the human emperor was not around, the human king would be the master of the human emperor. It could be said that the human king was a small version of the human emperor. A more vivid way of saying it was that the human king was a strong competitor for the human emperor. If the human emperor abdicated, the next human emperor would be born from the human kings. Commoner, Baron, Viscount, Count, Divine Marquis, Duke, Human King, and Human Emperor. These 8 levels were the promotion path of the human race. A mortal, from the moment of birth, was an ordinary commoner. Then, through diligent cultivation, he could increase his strength and establish a career, step by step increasing his rank from a commoner to a baron, then to a viscount, then to an earl, then to a marquis. As long as one was willing to work hard, in theory, everyone had a chance to become the human emperor, although it was very slim. However, it was precisely this slim chance that inspired generations of humans to work hard in cultivation and expand the territory of the human race, slowly increasing the strength of the human race. Now, in the central divine province, there were many big countries and many small ones. It was the result of the efforts of generations of humans. Under the human emperor, there were 3 human kings, 36 duke, 108 divine marquis, and countless counts, viscounts, and barons. All of them showed the prosperity of the central divine province. One had to know that times had changed. In the past, Daluo Taoist priests could become a human king. But now, no matter how weak a human king was, he was at least a quasi-saint. As for the duke, every one of them was a Khanate Taoist priests. As for the divine marquis, they were perfected Khanate Dao lords. The 3 human kings were 3 quasi-saints. 36 grand dukes meant 36 Khanate Dao masters. The 108 divine marquis were 108 perfected Khanate Dao lords. And this was only the forces on the surface of the central divine province. 3 sovereign personages and 36 grand dukes did not mean that the central divine prefecture only had 3 pre-saints. Of the 36 zenith heaven holy lords, there would always be a portion of them who pursued the Tao wholeheartedly and did not want to go through hardships in the mortal world. Therefore, these people didn't enter the human emperor as officials. Instead, They lived in seclusion in the various famous mountains and rivers of the central divine province. They either cultivated in seclusion, oversaw a region, or founded a sect. In short, there were people doing all kinds of things. Within the central divine province, there were many countries, each of them doing their own thing. As a result, there were many conflicts between the various vassals, and sometimes, wars would break out. Almost every once in a while, an old vassal state would disappear and a new one would be established. Of course, these referred to the small countries. After reaching the level of a marquisate, there were very few that were destroyed. As for the duchies, since their appearance, their numbers had only increased and never decreased. With the daimyo Taoist priests overseeing them, the duchies were almost eternal. They might be weak for a while, but there was no risk of them being destroyed. As for the chaotic wars between the countries, Feng Zichen's attitude had always been to ignore them. As long as there wasn't a large-scale massacre of the common people, there was no sign of the human emperor among the countries. Only in chaotic times could true experts be born. Feng Zichen had always believed in this. Therefore, he clearly had the ability to stop the chaotic wars between the countries, but he had never done so. Feng Zichen wanted to use the chaotic wars between the countries to give birth to true experts for the human race. Without experiencing a storm of blood and wandering between life and death, how could one become a true expert? Peace would only make people gradually comfortable. Only danger could motivate people to continuously improve. If all the countries developed peacefully and lived in harmony with each other, then why would Feng Zichen need to give out titles? Wouldn't it be better to just centralize power? After the birth of the countries, there would be a large number of experts born for the human race. That was why Feng Zichen adopted the feudal system. Chapter 865. Speaking of which, Feng Zichen's method was very similar to raising venomous insects, but it didn't matter as long as they could become stronger. In addition, because of the existence of the God realm in the central divine prefecture, death didn't mean the end of life for the living beings here. After the death of the human clan in the central divine prefecture, ordinary mortals would be sent to the underworld for reincarnation. But for the outstanding human clan, sometimes death was a new beginning. They could go to the God realm to become gods, or serve as ghost messengers, or as judges. The outstanding ones could even become city gods or even higher-level patrols. Even if they didn't want to become gods, it didn't matter. They could also become earth gods to protect the land, become mountain gods to protect the land, or become guardian gods to deal with the injustice in the world. Under Feng Zichen's rule, the central divine prefecture was really ruled by both human clan and god. The human emperor even had the ability to confer titles to gods. The so-called burning incense divine path, in the hands of Feng Zichen, completely flourished in the central divine prefecture and reached an unprecedented peak. As for the so-called backlash of the dragon aura, Feng Zichen's cultivation was too strong. He was so strong that the backlash of the dragon aura couldn't do anything to him. In the end, the principle of the backlash of the dragon aura was even solved by Feng Zichen and easily refined it. In other words, Feng Zichen could be the human emperor for as long as he wanted, and there would be no danger of the backlash of the dragon aura. After being the human emperor for a long time, Feng Zichen began to think about the plan of the god emperor in the past. Now, he was trying to merge the human emperor's Tao fruit with the North Star Emperor's karmic position. He was trying to merge the two into one and become a stronger god emperor's Tao fruit, which was comparable to the celestial emperor. Once Feng Zichen succeeded, the heaven realm would change its name to the immortal realm in the future. After Feng Zichen became the god emperor, the gods would be under his jurisdiction, and the immortals would be under Haotian's jurisdiction. In that case, the heaven realm without gods and only immortals would become the immortal realm. The celestial court would also be changed to the celestial court. By then, the divine court, the immortal court, and the Yin court would rule the three realms together. It was also because of this that Feng Zichen rarely paid attention to the human race. Take the past few years as an example. Most of the great masters who had reincarnated into the human race had grown up. No, it was not appropriate to call it growth. This was because these great mediums were not reincarnated to cultivate again. Instead, they were a strand of divine consciousness that had entered the world. Although this strand of divine thoughts was not as strong as the original body, and did not have the power to destroy the world, they still had the memories of the original body, and even the realm of the original body. Therefore, although the reincarnations of these powerful beings did not have powerful magic power, they could manipulate the power of heaven and earth with a thought. With a wave of their hand, they could even change the laws of heaven and earth. Ordinary Daluo Taoist priests would not be their opponents and would be easily crushed by them. Apart from the fact that they were strong enough, more importantly, the true bodies of these great divine masters were still there, still alive. This was the reason why they were so strong. However, the reincarnations of these great divine masters did not show great strength at birth because of their agreement with Feng Zichen. Instead, they were like light and dust, and as time passed, they improved their strength step by step. Until recently, as the destiny of the central divine region became more and more intense, the situation became more and more chaotic. Strong masters emerged in large numbers, and countless grasslands rose up, fighting for hegemony on the earth. The relationship between the various countries became more and more tense. The entire central divine region seemed to have become a huge barrel of gunpowder. It was only one spark away from exploding. It was also at this time that the reincarnations of the great divine masters began to gradually show their talents. They lobbied between the various countries and explained their ideas to the nobles. For a time, a large number of new sects in the central divine region jumped out enthusiastically, attacking each other and arguing with each other. The debates between the vassal states and the debates between states became a spark that ignited the entire central divine prefecture, causing the current situation to be extremely chaotic. Although Feng Zichen was aware of this, he did not care about it. This was all agreed before. As long as these great divine masters followed Feng Zichen's rules, then Feng Zichen would not interfere with their actions. He had been silently watching from the side. It was under such circumstances that Xianqing reincarnated. In the creation pool of Penglai Island, immortal master Xianqing sat cross-legged on the 12th grade creation green lotus, looking at the people in front of him with a smile. Junior brother, junior sister, why do you look so sad? I'm just reincarnating and cultivating again, not entering the path of destruction. In just a few tens of thousands of years, we can meet again. Why do you have to act like a little girl? Xianqing's voice was as relaxed as usual, with a hint of teasing. He did not take the reincarnation matter to heart at all. In front of him were the disciples of the Jie school, such as Duobao, the goddess of golden spirit, the goddess of Wudong. After they heard from the Grand Master of Heaven that Xianqing was going to reincarnate and cultivate again, they all rushed to Penglai Island, saying that they wanted to send Xianqing on his last journey. Xianqing, thank you all. Although it's reasonable, at senior brother's realm, it's still too dangerous to reincarnate and cultivate again. If you're not careful and get plotted against, I'm afraid that your tens of millions of years of cultivation will turn into water overnight. Duobao said helplessly. He was still not optimistic about Xianqing's choice. He was not a small cultivator like a celestial immortal or a Xian immortal, who could reincarnate and cultivate again. There were not many concerns. However, Xianqing was already a top-notch great divine master in the world. Once he reincarnated, it was unknown how many people were coveting his origin and wanted to devour him. The reincarnated Xianqing was even more tempting than the meat of Tripitaka. If they devoured him, they could have tens of millions of years of cultivation for nothing, or they could refine a top-notch innate spiritual treasure. Who wouldn't be tempted? Even with the protection of a saint, it would be difficult to suppress the greed in some people's hearts, forcing them to take risks and make unwise moves like scheming against Xianqing. Therefore, in Duobao's opinion, Xianqing's decision was still inappropriate and needed to be reconsidered. However, after hearing Duobao's words, Xianqing reprimanded him without holding back. You're also the first disciple of the Jie school. Why are you so cautious? Everyone knows that the doctrine of the Jie school is to take a chance of survival from the world and step on the road of transcendence. Is it dangerous for me to reincarnate and cultivate again? It's definitely dangerous. But it's also because of this that I have the chance to achieve the great Tao. You have to know that the greater the risk, the greater the opportunity. If I can survive this, I'll definitely achieve the great Tao. The road to achieving the great Tao has always been full of ups and downs. When has it ever been simple? Is there no risk in changing to another method? It's the same as a 90% chance of survival. It's just that the way it's presented is different. When one's strength reached the level of Qianqing, they had their own understanding of the world and would not be swayed by external things. To be precise, they were abnormally persistent. Once they made a decision, they would not change it and would not listen to others' advice. Qianqing was not the only one who was like this. All the great divine powers were like this. If the Grand Master of Heaven could listen to the advice of the Grand Pure One and the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning, why would he take in so many disciples and end up in this world today, causing brothers to be at odds with each other? They were all people who could not be persuaded and were difficult to be swayed. Seeing this, Duobao did not persuade him anymore. He just sat cross-legged on the ground and chanted the Supreme Dongxian Spiritual Treasure Immeasurable Salvation Sutra for Qianqing. This was a Taoist scripture that the three pure ones jointly deduced when their relationship was at its best. It was abnormally mysterious and could help the living become immortals and the dead be released. All sentient beings in the three realms could be saved. Unfortunately, not long after this Taoist scripture was deduced, the three pure ones gradually had a gap. Not long after, they separated. This supreme Taoist scripture that witnessed the brotherhood of the three pure ones was also shelved. Very few people heard about it and naturally, very few people cultivated it. However, at that time, Qianqing was a disciple taught by the three pure ones. When the Salvation Sutra appeared in the world, he was taught this scripture and learned it. Therefore, Qianqing knew it. Later on, Qianqing taught the Salvation Sutra to Duobao. As for whether Duobao taught it to others, Qianqing did not know. At this time, Duobao was chanting the Salvation Sutra for peace of mind. He wanted to use this supreme Taoist scripture to remove the disaster on Qianqing. Although it was not very useful, it was his intention. After saying goodbye to everyone, Qianqing's body suddenly burned with green flames. That was the fire of creation and also the fire of the Great Tao. It came from the Great Tao and could burn everything. Junior brothers and sisters, I'm leaving. As he spoke, Qianqing's physical body had already been melted by the fire of Tao. It then burned Qianqing's primordial spirit and even his true spirit. The fire of Tao was merciless. Soon, Qianqing's entire body was melted. However, Qianqing was a top-grade attainment saint. Although the fire of Tao was strong, it could not burn him into ashes. At the end of the fire of Tao, there was still a little bit of Qianqing's physical body left. No matter how the fire of Tao burned, it could not burn it. That was the essence of Qianqing's physical body. His huge innate fiend god body was burned until there was only a little bit left. It could be said that the quantitative change led to a qualitative change. The power it contained was extremely terrifying. It surpassed the sage-to-be realm and touched the threshold of the origin realm. It was not only Qianqing's physical body. His innate primordial spirit and undying true spirit were also burned until there was only a little bit left. They had reached the level of the origin realm. In the fire of Tao, they shone with radiant light. They were immortal and indestructible. What was condensed was the essence. As if provoked, the fire of Tao burned even more fiercely. The terrifying heat melted the void and distorted the rules. It forced Duobao and the others to retreat quickly. Slowly, the remaining three forces of Qianqing also showed signs of melting. Whoosh! At this moment, the 12th grade green lotus of creation under Qianqing trembled slightly. Large amounts of holy light of creation gushed out and disappeared into the remaining forces of Qianqing. In an instant, Qianqing seemed to have been sublimated. The quality of his innate true spirit was further improved. He transformed from a top innate fiend god to an innate saint. More radiant light of Tao was born from the remaining forces of Qianqing, making it more mysterious. The green lotus of creation was a sacred item of the path of creation. Even Pangu could transform it, let alone Qianqing. Moreover, Qianqing's green lotus of creation was called 12th grade. However, it was actually 24th grade. Like the 3 heaven-opening treasures, it was the top innate merit true treasure. In terms of power, the 24th grade green lotus of creation was not inferior to the Taiji diagram, Pangu's banner, and the chaos bell. In some aspects, it was even better. The 36th grade green lotus of creation was enough to breed a chaos fiend god. It was not difficult for the 24th grade green lotus of creation to breed an innate saint. Enchanting had obtained the 24th grade green lotus of creation for many years. However, he had never used the power of the green lotus of creation to transform himself from a top innate fiend god to an innate saint. His purpose was to wait for this moment. At this critical moment, he would transform himself, complete his Tao foundation, and cultivate the origin Tao fruit. Under the burning of the Tao fire, Enchanting's remaining forces first absorbed the holy light of creation, and then slowly merged into one. The innate true spirit, innate primordial spirit, and innate physical body were completely mixed into one. They were no longer separated. The physical body was the true spirit, and the primordial spirit was the true spirit. At this moment, Enchanting's power and the entire origin Tao had reached a perfect state. In the Tao fire, a small ball of clear light rose slowly. It was perfect and flawless, and the origin Tao was integrated into one. It bloomed with radiance, illuminating the boundless universe and the infinite time and space. Under the illumination of this clear light, the Tao fire gradually extinguished. Only the clear light remained. It was like the sun in the sky, unmoving. This was Enchanting. At the same time, he was also the origin Tao fruit. It was the origin Tao fruit that was formed after Enchanting, the celestial lord of Xian sect, burned everything he had. With this origin Tao fruit, Enchanting, who was reincarnated, only needed to cultivate step by step. When his cultivation reached the state of great perfection of the sage-to-be, he could cultivate this origin Tao fruit in one go and become the origin Daoyuo Jingxian. This Tao fruit was formed after Enchanting's cultivation reached its peak. It was very compatible with him, and there was no difficulty in cultivating it. In other words, Enchanting's path to Tao had been opened, and all he lacked was time. So that's how it is, so that's how it is. So that's what this brat is planning. No wonder he didn't want to tell me. This method is too risky. If I'm not careful, I'll die. If I knew in advance, I would definitely try my best to stop him. On the Golden Turtle Island far away, the Tongtian sect leader, who was silently observing Enchanting, could not help but reveal a look of relief when he saw this scene. He finally knew what Enchanting's plan was. The so-called reincarnation was just a pretense. His real goal was still to reach the peak. Burning everything he had, and in the most desperate situation, he saw a glimmer of hope. From there, he could reach the peak and enter a new state. This method was the real method of dying 100 million times. If 100 million people used this method to break through, it would be considered good if one person could survive. Chapter 866. He was gambling with his life. Therefore, if the Tongtian sect leader knew about Enchanting's plan in advance, he would not have allowed him to do so. It's still too rash. Although Enchanting succeeded, the Tongtian sect leader did not feel relieved. He just felt that Enchanting was too risky and should not have done such a dangerous thing. Using this method to ascend to the extreme was not the right way to break through. However, this method was indeed powerful. Regardless of the level, as long as he succeeded, he would be able to advance to the next realm. Remember, it was any realm. After successfully ascending to the extreme of the sky immortal, he would be a Xian immortal. After successfully ascending to the extreme of the sage-to-be, he would be a primordial Daoyuo Jingxian. Of course, there was a prerequisite. He had to succeed to break through the realm. If he failed, he would only be left with death and his Tao would vanish. Even if Enchanting was immortal, if he failed to ascend to the extreme this time, he would not have an easy time. He would have to start all over again. Enchanting's primordial chaos Tao fruit rotated above the green lotus of creation for a moment. Then, it slowly dissipated and disappeared. It had already carried Enchanting's remnant true spirit and reincarnated. Although Qianqing's primordial chaos Dao fruit had been refined, it did not mean that he had directly broken through to the realm of the primordial chaos. There was still a process. Only when his cultivation had recovered to its peak and he had refined the primordial chaos Dao fruit could Qianqing be considered to have reached the realm of the primordial Daoyuo Jingxian. The moment Qianqing's primordial chaos Dao fruit disappeared, the Tongtian sect on the Golden Turtle Island took the initiative. The Qingping sword was unsheathed. The terrifying sword light illuminated the entire three realms. It circled in the river of time and space and did not dissipate for a long time. It alarmed many existences. The Tongtian sect leader was warning the great mediums of the eldritch world to not have any ideas about Qianqing's primordial chaos Dao fruit. Otherwise, what awaited them would be the endless pursuit of the Qingping sword. At this moment, Qianqing, who had reincarnated into the human race with the primordial chaos Dao fruit, had reached the most dangerous moment of his life. Although the primordial chaos Dao fruit was extremely compatible with Qianqing, it did not mean that outsiders could not refine it. If he could snatch Qianqing's primordial chaos Dao fruit, he could still refine it with some effort. The Dao fruit of the origin was formed after Qianqing's origin was sublimated to the extreme. It contained all of his cultivation. If an outsider were to obtain it and refine it, they would be able to take away everything from Qianqing in an instant and immediately reach the realm of the origin Daoyuo Jingxian. Using this method to attain the Dao would definitely require a certain price to be paid. However, compared to the scenery after attaining the Dao, this price was nothing. After all, not every great magician had the confidence to reach the realm of primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. At this time, the Qianqing Dao fruit, which was enough for them to reach the heavens in one step, became the last hope for these people to attain the Dao. In order to attain the Dao, some great practitioners were willing to take the risk. This was also considered the drawback of attaining the Dao through the extreme sublimation method. If they were not careful, it would be easy for others to snatch the Dao fruit of the origin. As a result, all of their previous efforts would be made for others. It was very miserable. It was precisely because of this that the Tongtian sect leader took out the Qingping sword and released the sword light in the long river of time and space without concealing it. He wanted to use this to warn those with ulterior motives. The primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian who used this method to attain the Dao by stealing others' Dao fruit of the origin must be at the lowest level of this realm. He could not even be compared to the so-called weakest person who attained the Dao through virtue. Such an existence was definitely not a match for the Tongtian sect leader. If the Tongtian sect leader used the four immortal slaying swords, it would not be a problem to kill him, but it would not be a problem to seal him. If the three pure ones joined forces, it would be even stronger. They would definitely be able to kill the new and weakest primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. They might even be able to refine the Dao fruit of the origin again before his realm stabilized. As for whether the three pure ones would join forces or not. In the past, everyone would say that the three pure ones had already split up and were not on good terms with each other. They would probably not join forces. However, during the investiture of the gods' war, everyone saw the scene of the three pure ones joining forces to fight against the human emperor. How could you say that they were not on good terms with each other when they could join forces to fight against the enemy? The so-called split up was just a pretense. In this way, after the Tongtian sect leader's warning, there would definitely be fewer powerful people who dared to have designs on the Qianqing sect. There might even be none. Of course, there would definitely be some powerful people who would make a move. However, at this time, it would be the time to see if the Tongtian sect leader's Qingping sword was good or bad. On this day, in the central divine province's country of Lu, clear light suddenly filled the sky. It was vast and mighty for more than 30,000 miles. At the same time, in a certain family, a woman dreamed of a green lotus falling into her arms. Then, she woke up with a start. Not long after, the news that she was pregnant spread. This time, it was like poking a hornet's nest and causing a huge commotion. The woman was not married, but the news that she was pregnant spread. This was not a disgraceful thing. It was not like the ancient times when people only knew the mother and not the father. Since the rise of human civilization, being pregnant before marriage had never been a glorious thing. The Central Divine Province's laws were not completely inhumane. There was no such thing as being drowned in a pig cage. However, being pregnant before marriage was still quite disgraceful to that family. It had tarnished their family's reputation by more than half. However, that family only had one daughter. What else could they do? Could it be that they could beat him to death? They could only continue to raise her. If the country of Lu was not in the Central Divine Province and was in an ordinary mortal world, the best choice for this family would be to hide their names and escape to a place where no one knew them and start anew. However, the country of Lu was in the Central Divine Province, a place where immortals and gods lived together. Knowing that there was a woman who was pregnant after being connected with heaven and earth, some cultivators were tempted and thought of the records in the ancient books. Being pregnant after being connected with heaven and earth was a phenomenon unique to the ancient divine emperors. According to legend, the ancient divine emperor Fuxi was born from the connection between Huaxiu and Luais. The earthly emperor Shennong was born from his mother's dream of Sui Hua entering her bosom. The human emperor Shenyuan was born from his mother's dream that she was in a huge nest. When she woke up, she found that she was already pregnant. As for the woman, she was pregnant from the dream of a blue lotus entering her bosom. When they thought of the time of her pregnancy, there was a phenomenon in the country of Lu. Clear qi was condensed for 30,000 miles and did not dissipate. Now, the timing was just right. The 30,000 miles of clear qi was caused by the child in the woman's belly. The ancient divine emperor was a natural-born god. For a moment, the cultivators nearby were tempted. They thought that the child was the reincarnation of the divine emperor, a god who had descended to the mortal world and had the possibility of becoming the human emperor. Of course, with such an extraordinary background, even if the child could not become the human emperor in the future, it would still be extraordinary in the future. Involuntarily, some cultivators wanted to take the child as their disciple. However, such people were in the minority. Most of them felt that they were not qualified enough. They all contacted their elders and reported what had happened here to them and asked them to make a decision. As for the gods in the country of Lu, they were already scared out of their wits. It was still fine in the mortal world. If the cultivators did not use their divine abilities, they could not see the abnormality of the child at all. However, it was different in the divine realm. Most of the living beings living there were gods who had extraordinary power. These gods looked from the divine realm and saw a ball of clear qi gathering in the woman's belly. It was releasing boundless radiance that was even more dazzling than the sun. Not to mention seeing what was inside the clear qi, the entire divine realm was illuminated by that ball of clear qi. The light was so bright that the gods here could not open their eyes no matter what their cultivation level was. Needless to say, the child in the woman's belly was definitely not simple. Otherwise, why would there be such a phenomenon? Some people were tempted to cherish talents, but naturally, there were also people with ulterior motives who had evil thoughts. Born with the appearance of a divine emperor, this child must be extraordinary. If they took the opportunity to take it out and refine it before it was born, they might be able to become a Tao Lord immediately. Some people had such thoughts, and some people directly took action. Unfortunately, these evil spirits were burned to ashes by the clear qi in the woman's belly before they could get close to her. However, although the clear qi was strong, it was only useful for cultivators. It was useless for mortals. The woman was pregnant before marriage, and she was looked down upon and scolded by many people. What's more, the woman's clansmen wanted to abort the child. However, as a mother, the woman was not swayed by the words of the outside world. She still maintained an optimistic attitude. The tribulation of Tao Ascension. That clear qi was naturally Xian Qing. He, who had just reincarnated, was facing the tribulation of Tao Ascension, the tribulation of death. He was not even born, but there was already a tendency of him dying. Tao Ascension was difficult, and every step was dangerous. This was only the beginning. There were many more tribulations waiting for Xian Qing. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. The woman's pregnancy was already showing, but her situation had improved greatly. Because, at some point in time, there was an extra Qilin in the Lu country. It was surrounded by auspicious clouds and looked very sacred. This Qilin would appear every day with a spirit fruit in its mouth. It would come to the woman's house punctually and offer her the spirit fruit. A Qilin giving spirit fruit was a treatment that only Huaxiu, the mother of heavenly Emperor Fuxi, could enjoy. It was confirmed that the child in the woman's belly must be someone like the ancient divine emperor. It was also because of the appearance of the Qilin that the surrounding rumors changed in the shortest time possible. The people here were not ignorant. The central god province was a place where humans and gods lived together. Seeing this phenomenon, the local people immediately realized that the woman's child was not simple. Therefore, the rumors changed. In the past, the child said that the woman was immoral and was pregnant with someone's bastard child. But in the blink of an eye, it became, I already knew that the child was extraordinary and was the reincarnation of a god. The change was so fast that it made people dumbfounded. After that, as time passed, more and more changes happened to the woman's situation. At some point in time, a majestic true dragon appeared in a lake in the country of Lu. Every day, it would catch all kinds of spirit fish from the lake and compete with the Qilin to deliver food to the woman. Then, a phoenix appeared. It was incomparably luxurious and also joined the ranks of delivering food. Not long after, the people in the country found that there were many divine beasts and auspicious beasts around them. And these divine beasts and auspicious beasts were all circling around the woman. For example, when the woman walked to the river, divine beasts would appear in the water. They would either give her all kinds of treasures in the water or carry her to swim in the water. If she came to the mountain forest, various divine beasts would appear. They would either blow the wind for her, give her fruits, or offer her divine spring water. In short, no matter where she went, all the living beings in the world would kindly express their goodwill to her. When the surrounding people saw this, although they did not say anything, they all knew that these changes were caused by the child in the woman's belly. This child was really extraordinary. There was already such a powerful phenomenon before it was born. If it was born, it would be incredible. The human race would definitely have another peerless prodigy. For a time, whether it was the gods or the surrounding cultivators, they all reached a tacit understanding to secretly protect the child and prevent it from being harmed by evil spirits. Therefore, such a situation occurred. During the day, the immortals silently protected the woman. At night, it was the gods' turn. It was also at this time that the rumors changed again. Some people swore that the child was the reincarnation of an immortal in heaven because they saw an immortal secretly protecting the child during the day. Some people refuted that the child was the reincarnation of a god because they saw the gods appear at night and silently protect the child. Just like that, a debate about the origin of the child arose. They argued endlessly about whether the child was a god who had descended to the mortal world or the reincarnation of an immortal. That was how boring it was. This debate continued until the 14th month of the woman's pregnancy. At this time, a major event occurred that caused the people to stop arguing. Xianqing's reincarnation needed about 24 months to be born, which corresponded to the 24 green lotus of creation. Therefore, it was not a problem for the child to not be born after 14 months. The surrounding people were also not surprised. After all, it was a natural god. It was normal for it to be different from others. It would be abnormal if it was the same as others. Of course, Xianqing was able to successfully conceive until now because of the various immortal fruits offered by the divine beasts. That woman only had a mortal body, but Xianqing was a top-tier great medium. How difficult was it to conceive an innate god with a mortal body? It was likely that before Xianqing was born, the woman's essence would have been exhausted and she would have become a dried corpse. Therefore, the scene of the divine beasts offering the immortal fruits happened. The immortal fruits were not ordinary either. They were all top-tier innate spiritual fruits. Each of them was more precious than the 9,000-year-old immortal peaches. If an ordinary person ate one of them, it would be an exaggeration to say that they would become Taoist priests. However, it would be no problem for them to become Tai Daoist lords. These innate spiritual fruits were the treasures of Feng Zichen and the Tongtian sect leader. In order for Xianqing to be born successfully, they gritted their teeth and took them out. As for the divine beasts, their origins were simple. They were the newly born descendants of the 3 clans. Their bloodline was incomparably pure. Otherwise, they would not be qualified to offer the immortal fruits to Xianqing. Chapter 867. At the end of the day, Xianqing was a person of great merit. He had made great contributions to the primitive world and was a Tao ancestor, the primitive talisman ancestor. With such a status, how could the world let him suffer? When the woman was 14 months pregnant, it happened to be the day of the human race's ancestral worship. The people of the various vassal states and even the people of the human Tao imperial court would put down their work on this day and head to the ancestral temple to worship the past sacred emperors of the human race and countless predecessors. On this day, the human race experts would go out to hunt ferocious beasts, demons, and other enemies of the human race and take their heads to worship the predecessors. The purpose of this was to not forget their roots. The descendants of the human race would never dare to forget the blood feud of the human race. At the same time, this would let people understand the hardships and dangers of their ancestors in the primitive world to establish a territory belonging to the human race step by step. It would let the future generations remember how difficult it was for the ancestors to establish the human race's territory. It was also at this time that a shocking scene took place in the country of Lu. The woman headed to the ancestral temple to worship the martyrs and pray that the martyrs would protect her unborn child. However, she had never expected that after she arrived at the imperial ancestral temple, none of the martyrs worshipped by the imperial ancestral temple would dare to accept her, except for the holy mother of the human race, goddess Nuwa. After entering the ancestral temple, the woman followed the rules and bowed to the martyrs. However, before she could kneel, the memorial tablets of the martyrs in the ancestral temple all shook and moved to the side, not daring to accept her bow. When the immortals and gods hiding in the dark saw this, they were even more shocked. Although they had already guessed that the child was extraordinary, they still didn't expect it to be so extraordinary. Others couldn't tell, but how could they not? The actions of the memorial tablets of the martyrs clearly meant that they were afraid and didn't dare to accept her bow. How great of a background did this person have to be to make the martyrs of the human race so afraid that they didn't dare to accept her bow? However, the shock wasn't over yet. The woman hesitated for a moment, then turned and entered the main hall to worship the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. However, when the statues of the 5 emperors saw the woman, they all moved to the side, indicating that they didn't dare to accept her bow. The 3 sovereigns accepted the woman's bow, but after she bowed, the statues of the 3 sovereigns returned the bow at the same time. The ancient sacred emperor's reincarnation. She's definitely the ancient sacred emperor's reincarnation. Otherwise, how could the 3 sovereigns treat her with respect? It's time for the human race to rise again. Someone who saw this scene couldn't help but shout out in excitement. He couldn't be blamed for losing his composure, as this phenomenon was truly too shocking. How many people in the 3 dimensions were able to make the 3 emperors talk to them as equals? If he wasn't a high and mighty saint, then he must be one of the few great divine powers in the world. Such a figure was actually born into the human race. Wasn't it just like the reincarnation of Fuxi into the human race, becoming the human emperor and leading the human race to prosperity? Next, the woman arrived at the depths of the imperial ancestral temple. There were 2 shrines here. The larger one was dedicated to Empress Nuwa, while the smaller one was dedicated to the ancient sage emperor. It was said that the ancient sage emperor was the first human emperor of the human race. His origin was even more ancient than the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. He was born even before the ancient era. As a character from the ancient era, he had once competed with the celestial emperor. Later on, after this ancient sage emperor experienced a series of magnificent lives, he became the emperor of the North Star heavenly emperor in the heavens. He was the lord of the gods and commanded all the gods. Of course, the ancient era was too long ago. Not many people knew about the deeds of this ancient sage emperor. Most of them were legends, and no one knew if they were true or false. However, there was one thing that everyone knew. It was rumored that the current human emperor was the reincarnation of this ancient sage emperor. When he saw the human race gradually weakening in the heaven realm, he was displeased. Hence, he personally reincarnated into the human race and led the human race to glory again. Not many people knew about the deeds of the ancient sage emperor. However, when it came to the current human emperor, it was impossible to finish talking about him even if one talked for 3 days and 3 nights. He was truly an invincible figure in the 3 dimensions. Even the saints were no match for him. He was the idol of the human race. It was also because people knew that the ancient sage emperor was the previous human emperor that the ancient sage emperor's palace became the imperial ancestral temple. It became a place of prosperity. Not to mention the gods and Buddhas, even goddess Nua's temple was not as prosperous as this. In the 3 dimensions, it was not only the human race who worshipped the human emperor. Among the 10,000 races, many living beings worshipped the human emperor and viewed him as the Lord of the heavens and earth. Even the demon race had many clans that secretly worshipped the human emperor. His power had reached its peak. 10,000 races were afraid of him and viewed him as a god, the Lord of the heavens and earth. They did not dare to offend him. Feng Zichen and Xian Qing were originally one. Although he intended to destroy Xian Qing's incarnation, it was not appropriate for him to see this woman. Hence, when the woman was about to reach his temple, he plucked a seed from the tree of world and threw it over. My good friend is in trouble. I can't bear to see her, so I'll give you this to protect yourself. When your good friend recovers, we can meet again. After saying that, the seed of the tree of world flew out from the Saint Emperor's palace and turned into a green robe that covered the woman's body. This green robe was transformed from the seed of the tree of world and was an upper-grade connate spiritual treasure. The tree of world was a chaos spiritual root that was on the same level as the 36th grade chaos green lotus. The seed it bore was a chaos level treasure and not a connate item. Every one of them was a connate embryo. They could turn into a connate spiritual treasure or become a connate god fiend. With Feng Zichen's supreme means, it was not difficult for the seed of the tree of world to turn into an upper-grade connate spiritual treasure. After bestowing the upper-grade connate spiritual treasure protective robe, the door of the Saint Emperor's palace closed automatically with a clang. At this moment, the woman realized that the person who had spoken to her was the current human emperor. After coming to her senses, the woman hurriedly bowed in the direction of the Saint Emperor's palace respectfully and said, "Thank you for your reward, human emperor." However, just as she was about to bow, a gust of wind blew and prevented her from bowing. Looking at the situation, the woman knew that the Saint Emperor was unwilling to accept her bow, just like the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. After she figured this out, the woman stopped persisting, and she turned around and headed towards Nua's hall. However, she couldn't help but wonder who the child in her womb was. Why would the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors value it so much? Heavens, that's a connate spiritual treasure, isn't it? His Majesty has bestowed a connate spiritual treasure? Also, does His Majesty not allow the woman to enter the palace because he doesn't want to accept her bow? The scene outside the Sage Emperor's palace was witnessed by the immortals and deities who were hiding in the dark to protect the woman, causing another round of exclamations. Nothing unexpected happened when the woman reached the Nua palace. Her Majesty Nua accepted her bow, but before she left, Her Majesty Nua's statue suddenly glowed brightly and dropped strands of connate creation origin into the woman's body. Heavens, even Her Majesty Nua has appeared to bless the child. Who is she? At this point, everyone was already numb. No matter what happened, it would not be able to move them. However, they were even more curious about the child's identity. Have you heard? That woman is pregnant with an ancient saint emperor, someone like His Majesty Fuxi. In the past, Huaxiu gave birth to Fuxi, the heavenly emperor. Just like this woman, she suddenly became pregnant. After the ancestral worship, the atmosphere had completely changed. No one dared to speak ill of the woman, and when they saw her, everyone, regardless of whether they were nobles or nobles, bowed to her for fear that they would incur the wrath of the sage emperor and be punished for their disrespect. What? Why didn't I know about the Saint Emperor's arrival in Lu? And why didn't you report it until today? What a bunch of trash. Why didn't you wake me up in advance when such a big thing happened? At this time, in the most splendid palace in the center of Lu, the Marquis of Lu, Zhou Gan, who who was personally conferred the title by the human emperor, was furious and raging at his subordinates. When Qianqing arrived, he was in seclusion, so he didn't know about the phenomenon. His subordinates didn't see anything unusual, so no one reported it to him. It wasn't until what happened in the imperial ancestral temple spread that Marquis Lu's subordinates realized the seriousness of the problem. They hurried to Marquis Lu's place of seclusion and woke him up. After Marquis Lu came out of seclusion and learned about what happened recently, he flew into a rage and scolded the prince who supervised the fruits on his behalf. Although Marquis Lu, Zhou Gan, wasn't one of the 108 divine marquises and was just an ordinary marquis, he was a perfected Khanate Dao lord and had a chance to reach the level of Taoist priests. Therefore, his knowledge was far beyond those immortals. Although he didn't meet Qianqing in person, he could infer from the information he received that this must be the reincarnation of a top great medium who had a very good relationship with the human race. It could even be said that this person had a very high status in the human race. Otherwise, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors wouldn't have treated him with such respect. Why did he say so? Because with Marquis Lu's status, he more or less knew the inside story of some great medium who had reincarnated into the human race. He also knew that there were many great medium who had reincarnated into the human race. Those who preached in the human race were most likely the reincarnations of the great medium. However, although these great medium were powerful and had a respectable status, they were only able to make the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors bow down to them, let alone the Saint Emperor. All in all, their strength was enough, but their status wasn't enough. After entering the human emperor palace, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors might not accept their greetings, but the Saint Emperor would definitely accept it. Therefore, if he wasn't a great medium, could it be that he was the reincarnation of the ancient Emperor Yu? Lu Ho couldn't help but think so. But soon after, this thought was overturned by him. King Yu was the descendant of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. It was natural for him to bow to the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. How could he not accept it? So, who was that person? For a moment, Lu Ho couldn't figure out Qianqing's background. However, it didn't matter if he couldn't figure it out. What mattered was that Lu Ho was sure that his opportunity had arrived. No matter who the reincarnation of that person was, or whether he was the ancient Saint Emperor who had descended to the mortal world, his background must be extraordinary for him to be treated like this by the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Now, as long as he could find a chance to build a relationship with him before he grew up, and at the same time, do him a few favors. Then, when his cultivation recovered to its peak, he could help Lu Ho. Wouldn't Lu Ho soar? Thinking of this, Lu Ho hurriedly ordered, "Men, prepare a big gift for me. An ancient Saint Emperor has come to Lu Ho. How can I not pay him a visit?" As he spoke, Lu Ho walked towards Lu Ho's treasury while using a secret technique to contact his friends in the human emperor palace. He planned to ask them about Qianqing's background. To be able to become a marquis, even if he was born a commoner, he could still have a lot of connections at this time. Having a few friends in the human emperor palace was nothing. Who didn't have masters, elders, relatives, and friends? To become the human emperor, strength alone wasn't enough. You also needed to have enough skills. It was the same for building a career. Retracting his gaze from the Saint Emperor Palace, Feng Zichen called his personal guard commander and ordered, "Master Celestial has been reincarnated into the human race. He will be born in a few days. Take my 3,000 personal guards and rush to Lu Ho to protect Master Celestial and his mother. Don't let anything happen to them. If anything happens to Master Celestial and his mother, you don't have to come back. Find a place to end your lives." What? Master Celestial has been reincarnated into the human race? After hearing Feng Zichen's order, the commander was shocked for a moment. Then, he hurriedly accepted the order and said, "Yes, sir." He didn't understand why Master Celestial would reincarnate into the human race. But he couldn't disobey the human emperor's order. This was a matter that could cost them their lives. The human emperor wouldn't joke around. If they really screwed up this matter and caused an accident to happen to the immortal master and his mother, then no one in the 3 realms would be able to save them. In 15 minutes, the following is anti-theft content. 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 After hearing Feng Zichen's order, the commander was shocked for a moment. Then, he hurriedly accepted the order and said, "Yes, sir." He didn't understand why Master Celestial would reincarnate into the human race. But he couldn't disobey the human emperor's order. After hearing Feng Zichen's order, the commander was shocked for a moment before he hurriedly accepted the order. Chapter 868. Although the divine demonic corridor had been opened, not everyone was qualified to use it. From its name, one could tell that the divine demonic corridor was a corridor exclusively for divine demons. Only connate divine demons were qualified to open the divine demonic corridor. Therefore, the divine demonic corridor was a way for the seniors of the connate divine demons to take care of the juniors, saving them from the pain of traveling. After all, the three realms were too big. It was too difficult for the connate divine demons who had yet to prove their Tao to travel. They might not be able to travel from one continent to another in tens of thousands of years. Feng Zichen's personal guards were the elites of the younger generation of the various royal families. Every one of them was a prodigy of the human race. If they were in the central divine province, the worst of them would be an earl. And the commander of his personal guards was a prodigy among prodigies. He had long transformed into a connate divine demon and was half a step away from the Daluo Taoist priests. He was only one step away from proving his Tao. His strength was comparable to that of the 108 divine marquises of the human race. And Feng Zichen had a total of 4 such personal guards. This time, in order to protect Xian Qing, Feng Zichen sent out all 4 of them. It was because of the 4 commanders that they were able to open the divine demonic corridor and rush to the state of Lu. Not long after the personal guards left, Feng Zichen suddenly stood up and stared straight ahead, motionless. It was the direction Feng Zichen was staring at. Hundreds of thousands of miles away, an old man riding a green ox was slowly approaching. The green ox did not walk fast. It could only travel 1,000,000 miles in a day. It would take at least 100 days to get here. 1,000,000 miles in a day was not slow. But it also depended on who the other party was. If it was an ordinary immortal, this speed would naturally be extremely fast. But the other party was not. That old man was Tao ancestor Heng Jun, who was impersonating Taisheng Lao Jun. Therefore, how could Feng Zichen not be shocked to see him rushing towards him? Why did the Tao ancestor come here for no reason? Feng Zichen was very curious about the Tao ancestor's purpose, but he didn't rush forward to ask. Instead, he continued to sit in the human emperor palace and waited for the Tao ancestor's arrival. As for picking her up, that was impossible. If the Tao ancestor came in the name of the Grand Supreme Elder, he would be the Grand Supreme Elder and the incarnation of the Grand Pure One. Such an identity was naturally not worthy of Feng Zichen standing up to welcome him personally. Even if the Grand Pure One came, Feng Zichen would have to depend on his mood to welcome him, let alone a mere clone. Although Lu Ho had taken the lead, his speed was still not as fast as Feng Zichen's personal guard. After all, time stopped in the God and Devil corridor. When Lu Ho arrived, Feng Zichen's personal guards had already arrived. They immediately protected Xian Qing's mother. Coincidentally, among the personal guards, there was someone who knew Lu Ho. He quietly went up and asked, "Brother, which great figure is this reincarnated?" That personal guard turned to look at him and said, "Why are you asking so much? Anyway, it's a great figure." Although they knew Xian Qing's identity, they didn't dare to reveal anything if Feng Zichen didn't say anything. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, Lu Ho didn't say anything. Instead, he took on the responsibility of guarding with these personal guards. Just like that, for the rest of the time, everything was peaceful. Soon, it was time for Xian Qing to be born. On this day, the woman was sleeping. In her dream, she dreamed of a green lotus blooming slowly. The flower bloomed 24 times, and endless creation chi flowed. At this point in the dream, the woman suddenly woke up. Then, she saw a delicate child beside her. Xian Qing was born. The moment Xian Qing was born, the entire country of Lu suddenly fell into darkness. The entire void also began to collapse abruptly. It shattered into pieces and fell from the sky. A big hand appeared silently and grabbed Xian Qing, who had just been born. This was a move by a powerful person. He wanted to steal Xian Qing's primordial chaos Dao fruit to step into the realm of primordial chaos. The reason why this powerful person dared to make a move was not that he wasn't afraid of Tong Tian's sect leader's revenge, but that he had already thought of a way out. At this time, this powerful person was in the chaos outside the sky. After this move, whether it was successful or not, he would immediately escape into the depths of the chaos outside the sky and never appear in the untainted land. If he succeeded, he would be able to attain the Tao in one fell swoop and cultivate to the chaos zenith heaven golden immortal realm. From then on, he would be immortal and indestructible. Even with the vastness of the chaos outside the realm, he would be able to roam freely and unrestrained. If he failed, he would make up his mind to cultivate in seclusion in the chaos outside the sky. As long as he didn't reach the realm of primordial chaos, he wouldn't come out. At that time, he, who had no way out, might be able to erupt with his greatest potential and break through in adversity to reach the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. This was considered cutting off his own path of retreat. He would stimulate his potential and force himself to break through. Of course, this powerful person's plan was quite perfect, but it didn't mean that there were no risks. There was still a great risk. That was, once he was slow, he would be caught by Tong Tian's sect leader and be killed by the 4 fairy slaying swords. Or he would be sealed and never have the chance to come out. However, how could there be no risks in reaching the realm of Tao? In order to reach the realm of Tao, it was worth taking some risks. If he succeeded, he would be free. If he failed, he wouldn't be too far off. Anyway, he would be stuck in the realm of half-step primordial chaos. He might as well die. It was because the Almighty held such a thought that such a scene had occurred. How dare you! On Golden Turtle Island, Tong Tian's sect leader saw this scene from afar and couldn't help but be furious. He immediately pulled out the Qingping sword and threw it in the direction of Xian Qing, wanting to block the attack for him. However, although Tong Tian's sect leader was fast, someone was faster than him. It wasn't Feng Zichen, but the fate of the human clan. Just as Xian Qing was in danger, the fate of the human clan shook and directly fell from the river of destiny. It appeared above the reincarnation of Xian Qing's head and covered him, blocking the attack of the powerful person for him. At the same time, several more attacks arrived. The temptation of the primordial chaos fruit was still too great. It attracted many powerful people who had no hope of breaking through and chose to take the risk. They didn't hesitate to take the risk of offending Tong Tian's sect leader and even the entire human clan to take away Xian Qing's primordial chaos fruit. What was the meat of Tripitaka? Compared to the current Xian Qing, it was like a small child in the presence of a great sorcerer. They couldn't be compared at all. Boom! At this moment, the Qingping sword arrived. Bright green sword light swept out like a vast sea of sword qi. It was mighty and mighty, blocking the next few supernatural powers and not letting them hurt Xian Qing at all. At this moment, what was Feng Zichen doing? He had already left the human emperor palace and even the central divine land and the three realms to come to the chaos beyond the heavens. After the powerful person attacked, Tong Tian's sect leader didn't know that the fate of the human clan would protect Xian Qing, so his first reaction was to throw down the Qingping sword to protect Xian Qing. And Feng Zichen knew that the fate of the human clan would protect Xian Qing and wouldn't let anything happen to him. Therefore, after the powerful person attacked, Feng Zichen directly locked onto his position and crossed the endless void to attack the chaos beyond the heavens. Rumble. Seeing that his attack didn't succeed, the powerful person didn't linger and directly turned to escape into the depths of the chaos beyond the heavens. When Feng Zichen arrived at the chaos beyond the heavens, he saw his back frantically fleeing. The chaos beyond the heavens was really big. From the fact that the entire untainted land was surrounded by the chaos beyond the heavens, one could know that the chaos beyond the heavens was countless times bigger than the untainted land. Therefore, if this powerful person really escaped to the depths of the chaos beyond the heavens and hid, no matter how powerful Feng Zichen was, he couldn't find him in the chaos beyond the heavens. Even with Tong Tian's sect leader, he couldn't find him. The chaos beyond the heavens was the most mysterious place in the untainted land. No one knew how many secrets were hidden in it and how many risks were hidden. Not to mention that the chaos beyond the heavens bordered the great chaos beyond the heavens. Who knew if that person would escape from the chaos beyond the heavens? Although the great chaos beyond the heavens was dangerous, staying in the untainted land meant certain death. How could he choose? Who would he use? Moreover, in the great chaos beyond the heavens, in addition to countless unknown dangers, there were many unimaginable opportunities. If one was lucky enough to obtain one, it wouldn't be difficult to reach the origin realm or even go further. As for the sky screen, its characteristic had always been that it allowed people to leave but not enter. If one really wanted to leave, the sky screen wouldn't stop them. Want to run? Do you think you can run? Looking at the fleeing figure of the great medium, Feng Zichen showed a sarcastic smile. The gap between them was really too big. Feng Zichen was the human emperor and also had the karmic rank of Emperor Gaochen Tianwang. Although his strength couldn't compete with the 9th heaven of origin realm, it wasn't difficult for him to deal with a 7th heaven of origin realm expert. In other words, Feng Zichen's strength was comparable to that of the 7th heaven of chaotic essence, while his opponent was only a great divine, a half-step chaotic essence. It would be a piece of cake for him to take him down. If the great medium had escaped before Feng Zichen arrived, Feng Zichen wouldn't have been able to do anything to him. However, since he was a step slower and was seen by Feng Zichen, he couldn't escape the fate of being suppressed. Suppress. With a thought, Feng Zichen visualized Mount Buzhou in his sea of consciousness. Then, he formed a seal with both hands and suddenly covered the escaping great medium. Rumble. A mighty force that could suppress everything suddenly spread in the chaos outside the sky. Immediately, the restless chaos chi in the surroundings immediately stagnated and was suppressed by a mighty force. Above the great medium, the illusory image of an ancient divine mountain gradually took shape. It was incomparably sacred and suppressed him in place, making him unable to move. With a rumble, the illusory image of Mount Buzhou pressed down and directly suppressed the great medium into powder. His body and innate indestructible true spirit were all shattered. With a casual stroke, Feng Zichen separated the chaos. He saw the clear qi rising, the turbid qi falling, the yin and yang were born, the yin and yang were divided, and the three forces stood. A world gradually took shape. Rumble. However, the world was only halfway through its evolution when it began to show signs of collapsing due to the lack of energy and the lack of something to support it. The clear qi began to fall and the turbid qi began to rise. The yin and yang qi had a tendency to evolve into the chaos qi again. The whole world began to walk towards destruction and collapse, returning to the chaos. At this moment, Feng Zichen moved. He saw that he integrated the broken flesh and true spirit of the great medium into the new world, promoting its evolution. Sure enough, after integrating the flesh and true spirit of the great medium, the new world gradually stabilized and evolved rapidly. The rules became more and more perfect. He believed that when this world was completely born, it would definitely be a top-level greater 1,000 world. As for the great medium, his origin had been exhausted and he could only be forced to fall into a deep sleep. At this time, Feng Zichen could use the new will of the world to suppress the consciousness of the great medium, so that he could never wake up until the world was destroyed. However, even if this world was destroyed, the tide of destruction that would be produced after its destruction would be enough to make this great medium suffer. However, how could a top-level greater 1,000 world be destroyed so easily? In theory, it could coexist with the untainted world. In other words, this great medium would probably never wake up. When Feng Zichen sealed this great medium, in the three realms, the Tongtian sect leader was also fighting with several great medium. Even if the other party was a fellow Daoist in the past, at this moment, the Tongtian sect leader was merciless. The four immortal slaying swords shuttled back and forth in the void, beating the several great medium who were fighting with the Tongtian sect leader until they were dripping with blood. Their auras also became more and more dispirited. This time, the Tongtian sect leader was really angry. He had warned everyone repeatedly not to attack Xianqing. Otherwise, don't blame him for being merciless. However, these people still ignored his warning. It was obvious that they did not take him seriously. Their deaths were not to be regretted. The Tongtian sect leader was angry and had the intention to kill. Not long after, he killed a great medium. When the others saw this, they did not have the intention to continue fighting. They directly retreated and fled for their lives. There were exactly 4 people who fled. With a thought, the Tongtian sect leader split into 4. Each of them held a Khanate killing sword and chased after the 4 great medium. The Tongtian sect leader was not weaker than others in his life. He saw that the Grand Pure One had the 3 Pure Ones technique and could create 3 incarnations that were about the same combat strength as his original body. Therefore, he had painstakingly researched for many years and combined the Khanate 4 great powers to create a divine ability. He could split himself into 4 and create 4 powerful incarnations that respectively control the power of earth, fire, water, and wind. If he used the 4 immortal slaying swords, the combat strength of his incarnations would not be much different from his original body. This divine ability was the one that the Tongtian sect leader was currently using. The Tongtian sect leader had not thought of its name because this divine ability was not perfect yet. For the time being, it was not as good as the Grand Pure One's 3 Pure Ones. P.S. I'm about to collapse from diarrhea. Chapter 869. Because of this, the Tongtian sect leader did not have the intention to pass down this supernatural power for the time being. Chance. Seeing that the Tongtian sect leader and the human emperor Feng Zichen were hindered by their people, they could not get away. Some of the great divines who were still hesitant finally made up their minds at this moment. Whoosh! A few more divine lights appeared and brushed towards the reincarnation of Xianqing. At this moment, the human emperor and the Tongtian sect leader were no longer there to save him. In the crisis, 3 terrifying lights fell from the sky and enveloped the reincarnation of Xianqing, blocking the attack for him. This was the manifestation of the 3 emperors of the human race. The divine lights of the 3 emperors condensed and did not disperse. They kept circling around the reincarnation of Xianqing and finally turned into 3 marks, disappearing into his body. After that, the divine lights of the 3 emperors disappeared. But before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the divine lights of the 5 emperors flickered in the sky above the reincarnation of Xianqing. They kept circling above the reincarnation of Xianqing and finally turned into a 5-colored canopy with the Dharma of the 5 emperors imprinted on it. This was the 5 emperors canopy, formed by combining the power of the 5 emperors of the human race. It condensed the power of the 5 emperors and the fate of the human race into one body. Its defense was unparalleled and could block the attack of Hunyuan. Kill. The sound of killing suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. It was extremely urgent, and the killing intent filled the 3 realms, causing countless beings to feel a chill. This was Fuxi playing the guqin. Fuxi's music resounded through heaven and earth, releasing boundless killing intent. He vowed to kill the great divines who attacked Xianqing. Everyone said that Fuxi was unparalleled in the innate 8 trigrams, but they forgot that Fuxi was the music ancestor of the prehistoric era. When Fuxi played the guqin, it could kill and purify the world. It was really terrifying. The Tao was in the fingers, and the guqin was the world. The Tao of the guqin was the world's Tao. Gong, Sheng, Jiao, Jiu, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. If the 5 notes were not messed up, there would be no sounds in the world. If the 5 notes were messed up, the 5 elements of heaven and earth would riot, and everything would return to chaos. The guqin could carry the world. No matter how chaotic the world was, it could be set right with a snap of the fingers. Dharma power breaking and sinking in the divine sea, Fuxi, the heavenly chi penetrating the heavenly dipper, waiting for the light of the extreme abyss. When the string is quiet, the big sound is quiet, and the sound is indistinct. The wandering god, Emperor Shi, came and went. This was the way. The chord is without a tune, the heart is without a shadow of dust, the mind turns into tranquility, and all that comes out is the ultimate sound. Great elegance returns to the origin. This is the Tao. Fluxors without fluxors would have a melodious sound similar to the great Tao. Heaven and earth were within their fingers, vast and boundless. It was known as Fuxi's heavenly voice. After a long while, Fuxi's song ended. The body of a half-step primordial chaos master was suddenly destroyed. His innate indestructible true spirit was destroyed by the sound, and his blood spilled in the untainted land. After Fuxi, Nuwa appeared. A gourd vine descended from the sky and wrapped around the wrist of the reincarnated Xianqing. It released strands of qi of creation and nourished Xianqing's body. This was the connate gourd vine, also known as the man-creating whip. Among the first generation of humans, only a few were personally created by Her Highness Nuwa. The rest were created by this vine, so it was also known as the man-creating whip. How great was the merit of creating a human? Her Highness Nuwa became a saint because of this. She became the first person to become a saint after Tao ancestor Hongjun. The connate gourd vine had contributed to the creation of a human, so it also received some merit and became a top-grade postnatal merit treasure. Although it was a postnatal merit treasure, the power of the man-creating whip was comparable to that of a supreme-grade connate spirit treasure. Not to mention, this treasure had a great restraining effect on the human race. With the man-creating whip in hand, there was no one in the human race in the world that couldn't be hit. As long as you were brave enough, you could even hit the human emperor. No one knew what Her Highness Nuwa saw when she taught the man-creating whip to Xianqing. 4 primordial chaos masters attacked one after another, as well as the death of several great mediums. Finally, some people woke up and put away their thoughts. They no longer attacked Xianqing. In an instant, the 3 realms regained its peace. However, to prevent people from taking risks, Feng Zichen sent Xianqing's reincarnation to the Central God Province. Not to mention that all the great mediums in the Eldritch land had sworn that they would never step into the Central God Province. At this moment, nearly 100 great mediums had gathered in the Central God Province. If anyone dared to cause trouble here, they would be besieged by hundreds of great mediums. Ru. A few days later, Feng Zichen, who had rushed back from the chaos outside the sky, saw Xianqing's reincarnation. He named him Ru. Ru was what people needed. It meant that Xianqing would become a person that the human race needed in the future. Ziru was Xianqing's name. Zi was the surname of the Wang family of the Shang dynasty. That's right, Ziru was a descendant of the Wang family of the Shang dynasty. After all, Feng Zichen had taken the world away from the Zi family. It was only right for him to return a peerless talent like him. After naming Qianqing, Feng Zichen put him aside and no longer cared about him. He was free to develop. And he continued to sit in the human emperor palace, waiting for the arrival of Dao ancestor Hongjun. While Feng Zichen was waiting for Dao ancestor Hongjun, a sound of nature suddenly came from the heaven and earth. It was like the roar of the great Dao. The heaven and earth trembled slightly, and people couldn't help but feel happy. What's more, the spiritual qi in the three realms, whether it was congenital qi or acquired qi, had increased by about 5% at this moment. 5% didn't seem to be much, but the spiritual qi didn't increase in one place, state, or realm, but the entire three realms. The three realms were so vast that it wasn't much smaller than the eldritch land in the age of witches and demons. In such a large area, the spirit qi in every place increased by about 5% in an instant. The amount of spirit qi increased was really shocking. Even if Feng Zichen fully operated the Pangu celestial being to absorb the chaos qi from the great chaos and transform it into congenital qi, it would still take hundreds or even thousands of years for the spiritual qi in the three realms to increase by 5%. The sudden increase in spirit energy by 5% had undoubtedly brought an enormous change to the three dimensions. Because of this, countless cultivators had attained a higher level of enlightenment and stepped into an even higher realm of cultivation. Who knew how many rare and precious fruits were born once again? What's more, there were several congenital fiend gods that were no longer born in the world. There were even more congenital spiritual treasures in the process of being born. This is, suddenly standing up from the throne, Feng Zichen looked ahead in surprise. This was the sign of Dao attainment. Was someone about to attain Dao? Someone was about to attain Dao and was sensed by heaven and earth. Therefore, all kinds of strange phenomena were spontaneously produced to celebrate the birth of another transcendent. This was the origin of the strange phenomenon in front of him. Who was about to attain Dao? How could it be so fast? The Dao discussion had only begun for a few decades, but someone had already taken the crucial step and cultivated to the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. This was too fast. At this moment, not only was Feng Zichen curious about who was about to attain Dao, but the other great divine powers were also curious about who was about to attain Dao. For a moment, terrifying gazes rose from all over the three realms and looked towards the central god land as if they were looking for something. Raising his hand, Feng Zichen wanted to expel all these gazes, but after thinking about it, he finally put down his raised hand. This matter couldn't be stopped, so let them see. As long as they knew what was going on and didn't look at things they shouldn't look at. As the human emperor and the creator of the central god land, Feng Zichen had absolute control over the central god land. With a thought, he locked onto the origin of all these strange phenomena. There, countless providence gathered, creating thousands of phenomena. There were dragons and phoenixes, and Xianhuang Qi rising, so it's him. After a careful scan, Feng Zichen found the existence who was about to attain Dao. The top great divine powers of the celestial sect of wonders, Daoist Daozhong, claimed to be born in the great Dao. He was located in the middle of the sky, bearing the weight of heaven and earth. He was also a natural-born saint. Daoist Daozhong was born noble. Although he wasn't as orthodox as the three pure ones and the other Pangu, he wasn't far off. When he was in the Purple Cloud Palace, his strength was also one of the best, comparable to Di Jun. Among the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, he could also squeeze into the top 10. He was even stronger than Kunpeng and Hongyun. However, he was a person who wholeheartedly pursued Dao. After Dao ancestor Hongjun finished his 3 lectures, he didn't leave the chaos outside the sky, nor did he enter the struggle for hegemony in the untainted world. Instead, he found a place to cultivate in seclusion and began a long period of bitter cultivation. It wasn't until the Daluo sky reopened and countless powerful figures came to discuss Dao that Daozhong was alarmed. He rushed back from the chaos outside the sky to discuss Dao with everyone and understood his opportunity to attain Dao. Boom! 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 In Feng Zichen's eyes, he saw strands of connate Dao aura surging out of Daozhong's body. Following the mysterious connection, they poured into Daozhong's body in the distance. This was the result of Daozhong's reincarnation this time. It was also the reason why he could reach the primordial chaos realm. Those who came to the human clan were only the incarnations of the divine senses of those powerful figures. Even if they had gained something, it would be transmitted to their bodies through the connection between their incarnations and their bodies. Otherwise, how could they break through? Let the incarnations of their divine senses break through? Wasn't that a joke? Hey! He has reached the realm, the origin, and the conditions have been met. Why hasn't Daozhong broken through yet? Suddenly, Feng Zichen exclaimed softly. Because he found that Daozhong still hadn't broken through to the realm of the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. That wasn't right. The feeling he gave now was like that of the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. However, he always felt that something was missing, which made him incomplete. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen understood what was going on. It was because the karma had not been settled. Although Daozhong had met all the conditions to become the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, because the karma between him and the human clan had not been settled, his breakthrough this time was not perfect. There was still a trace of flaw. Only when the karma between him and the human clan was completely settled could Daozhong's primordial chaos Dao fruit be called perfect and flawless. How could he settle the karma between him and the human clan? It was simple. The key was Daozhong's divine thought incarnation. As long as he died, he would return to heaven and earth. Then, the karma between Daozhong and the human clan would be settled. As for how this divine thought incarnation would die, it had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. He wouldn't care either. It was all up to Daozhong. However, after watching for a while, Feng Zichen could see Daozhong's plan. He saw that as the divine thought incarnation passed on his understanding to the main body, his magic power was also slowly draining away. In the end, when the divine thought incarnation broke the connection between himself and the main body, the magic power in his body was also drained away. Right now, he was just a mortal, a complete and utter mortal. He did not have any magic power in his body, and only had ordinary martial arts to rely on. At the same time, this also meant that he had lost the long lifespan of an immortal. In about 100 years, he would be plagued with diseases due to the failure of his 5 internal organs and the aging of his organs. In the end, he would die. Because of the dissipation of his magic power, he would no longer be able to cultivate. The elixirs and miraculous medicines would also lose their effect on him. In 100 years, he would be dead. It's not a bad idea to entrust a wisp of mortal thought to this incarnation and let him spend the last days of his life in the human realm. Shaking his head, Feng Zichen withdrew his gaze. It was inevitable that Daozhong would attain the Dao. In less than 100 years, his primordial chaos Dao fruit would be completed. There would be another primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in the primordial chaos. Daozhong's attainment of the Dao didn't affect Feng Zichen much. However, it had a great impact on the human clan. It was estimated that after Daozhong attained the Dao, the human clan would be in chaos. The central divine province would also usher in chaos. Daozhong's attainment of the Dao was the beginning of the struggle for hegemony among the various countries. It was also a sign of the impending chaos. Feng Zichen still needed to make preparations early in order to prevent someone from acting too rashly and wantonly slaughtering the common people. Come, pass down my order. From today onwards, anyone who dares to slaughter the common people, regardless of their identity or cultivation, will be killed. In addition, order the city lords to activate the sky patrolling mirror and monitor the entire central divine province. If anyone is found slaughtering the common people for no reason, I will give them the right to kill first and report later. Although he said that he was calling for people, Feng Zichen's voice was very loud. It spread throughout the entire central divine province to ensure that every member of the clan could hear his order. We obey. In the 362 divine cities, excluding the sun, the moon, and the stars, there were voices replying. These were the city lords of the divine cities. With the support of the divine cities' origins, they all had the strength comparable to the Daluo Taoist priests. Unlike the ranks of the dukes, marquises, earls, and viscounts, the city lords of the divine cities were mostly the descendants of the royal family or the descendants of the heroes of the human clan. The city lords of the divine cities were never selected from ordinary people. They were all selected from the descendants of those who had performed meritorious deeds in order to commend the contributions of their ancestors. If one wanted to become a city lord of the divine cities, one had to work hard to perform meritorious deeds. This way, one's descendants would be qualified to become a city lord of the divine cities. This was also one of the ways to encourage the clan members to improve. As for the sky patrolling mirror, it was a treasure that Feng Zichen had created by imitating the supreme sky mirror. Every divine city had one. It didn't have many uses, but it could reflect everything that happened in the central divine province. Chapter 870. What is His Majesty doing? Why did he suddenly give this order? Is something big going to happen to the human race? Although the human cultivators obeyed the order, they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. Looking at the human emperor's posture, he obviously had a premonition that something was going to happen and was preparing in advance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suddenly given this order. The human race was going to be in chaos. It was indeed going to be in chaos. How did Daoist Daozhong achieve the Tao? After his spiritual incarnation entered the human race, he was born in Duke Qi's territory. At that time, Duke Qi, Jiang Huan, had just achieved the realm of Daluo Taoist priests and was conferred the title of Duke Qi, becoming one of the 36 dukes of the human race. At that time, he was in high spirits and was determined to achieve great things. He wanted to go one step further from the position of duke to the position of human king and help the human emperor rule the world. Unfortunately, although Jiang Huan's idea was good, he didn't know where to start looking at the huge Qi state. The Qi state wasn't small, but the position of duke wasn't enough. In order to help him achieve the position of duke, the Qi state's potential had been exhausted. No matter how much it developed, it couldn't bring him one step closer to the position of human king. Just as Jiang Huan was panicking, Daoist Daozhong's spiritual incarnation, Guanzhong, came to the Qi state. As a powerful person, even if it was just a spiritual incarnation, it was still boundless. Before Guanzhong arrived, Duke Qi, Jiang Huan, who was sitting in the palace of the Qi state, had already sensed his arrival. As soon as he looked up, he saw endless Daoist rhymes rising in the void in front of him. The great Tao was faintly manifesting. With Jiang Huan's cultivation as Daluo Taoist priests, how could he not see that a powerful person had arrived? At that moment, Jiang Huan didn't dare to hesitate and directly went out of the palace to greet him. Then, he saw Guanzhong, who had come in the body of a mortal. Even if he was a mortal, Jiang Huan still didn't dare to be negligent when he saw the great Tao behind him. He bowed as a disciple and invited Guanzhong into the main hall. After that, the two talked about something. Jiang Huan suddenly made Guanzhong his prime minister and asked him to govern the Qi state. Then, Guanzhong began his own path of Tao. When Guanzhong ruled the country, he first put forward the idea of enriching the people before ruling the country. During his time as the prime minister of the state of Qi, Guanzhong advocated the administration of salt and iron, divine gold ores, etc., the creation of currency, spirit stones, fate pills, etc., the control of food, spiritual herbs, etc., and the state's control of the circulation of commodities to increase the financial income and prevent the disparity between the rich and the poor. After that, Guan was the first to create and practice Shang dynasty warfare and subjugate other countries. He proposed, serve people with righteousness and not with war. If there is no other choice, use war. First, use righteousness. Save money. Harm to the people and danger to the country. Of course, this was not the main reason why Guanzhong was able to attain Tao. He was able to attain Tao mainly because he had redefined the concept of law. Measurements, ropes, ink, rules, weighing stones, dendrobium, and angular weights are called laws. The Dharma is the symbol of the world. Therefore, we must resolve our doubts and clarify right and wrong, and the lives of the common people are hanging in suspense. The law is the law of the world, the order of all things. The multiple definitions of law became the key to Guanzhong's attainment of Tao. Following that, under Guanzhong's governance, the state of Qi became more and more prosperous, and the country's luck became more and more prosperous. Jiang Huan's strength also rose along with it. Soon, he entered the middle of the Taoist priests from the early Taoist priests and blossomed into the middle of the three flowers above the head. However, by this time, the fate of the state of Qi had reached its peak. No matter how much internal development there was, it could not be improved at all. At this time, Guanzhong implemented the policy of respecting the king and repelling the barbarians. The original meaning of respecting the king and repelling the barbarians was respecting the king and repelling the barbarians. It changed the form of attack and defense, and prevented internal conflict. The guiding principle was respecting the human imperial court, not merging with the barbarians, and invading the barbarians' land. With this as the national policy, the state of Qi began to send troops to conquer the barbarians. What were barbarians? Most of them were descendants of the human race and other races, and a small number of them were descendants of traders. These people believed that the human bloodline was weak and could not be compared to the innate bloodline in their bodies. Therefore, they did not acknowledge their status as humans and chose to be enemies of the human race. With Feng Zichen's status, he naturally would not bicker with these ant-like people, so he did not care about them. Feng Zichen did not care, but that did not mean that others did not care. His subordinates did not care. The humans of Orthodox birth worked together to chase these people to the edge of the central divine province. They called them barbarians who did not know the teachings of the sacred emperor. After that, as time passed, these barbarians grew stronger and stronger. They were no longer satisfied with the barbarian land they lived in. They yearned for the vast and rich human territory. The barbarians were uncivilized and did not know etiquette. Once they had an idea, they would directly take it by force. Therefore, they began to invade the human territory in an attempt to take over this rich land. However, as soon as they set foot in the human territory, they were beaten to a pulp by the armies of the human Dao imperial court stationed at the border. They fled in panic. After that, the vassal states gradually rose. Feng Zichen withdrew the armies guarding the border and left the defense line to the vassal states. It was also at this time that the vassal states and the barbarian states began a long and drawn-out war. Guanzhong's policy of respecting the king and suppressing the barbarians was to plunder the fate of the barbarian states to strengthen the Qi state. In the war with the barbarian states, the Qi state won again and again, constantly eating away at the barbarian state's fate, causing the state's fate to flourish even more. As a result, Jiang Huan, the Duke of Qi, bloomed the smallpox of the three flowers above his head and cultivated to the late Daluo state. Unfortunately, the fate of the barbarians was still too weak. Even though the Qi state had almost driven the barbarians out of the central divine province and squeezed all of their fate, it still could not bring the Daluo Taoist priests to perfection. Since he could no longer improve from the outside, Jiang Huan could only focus on the inside again. Later, under Guanzhong's guidance, Jiang Huan, the Duke of Qi, conquered the world and became the #1 overlord of the vassal states. He gathered the fate of the various states and formed the human king karmic rank. However, although Jiang Huan was now a human king karmic rank, he was still not considered a human king because Feng Zichen had yet to confer him the title of human king. With the human emperor still around, how could anyone proclaim themselves a king? Wasn't that a rebellion? The equivalent of a human king still needed Feng Zichen's conferment. Otherwise, it would be illegitimate and illegitimate. In the human race, Feng Zichen's words were more effective than heaven and earth. A human king recognized by heaven and earth was not a true human king. Only a human king recognized by Feng Zichen was a true human king. His control of the human race's fate had reached an unprecedented level. No one could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. After Jiang Huan became a human king, Guanzhong was enlightened and fell into enlightenment. In a trance, Guanzhong came to the river of time and space. He saw the river of time and space surging forward. He also saw the scene of Jiang Huan becoming a human king from the waves. He saw that his dharma had been circulating in the world for a long time, affecting generations of people. At this moment, Guanzhong was enlightened. Then, he became a human king. The chaos of the human race would also begin from this. Guanzhong's method of becoming a human king was not irreplicable. Therefore, when the other powerful people found Guanzhong's method of becoming a human king, they would definitely follow suit and become a human king using this method. At that time, the various states would compete for hegemony. Wouldn't the human race be in chaos? Although Feng Zichen had foreseen this scene, he did not intend to stop it. On the contrary, he wanted to add fuel to the fire. P.S. The book has already collapsed. I can't write anymore. I can only say that I'll try my best to write a grand ending. In the future, the updates can only be said to be as stable as possible. Chapter 871. In the Human Dao Palace, Feng Zichen stamped the Human Dao Imperial Seal on an imperial edict. Confer the title of Duke of Qi, Jiang Huan, the Human King. This was an imperial edict conferring the title of Duke of Qi, Jiang Huan, the Human King. Once Jiang Huan accepted this imperial edict, his position as the Human King would be justified. Picking up the imperial edict, Feng Zichen thought for a moment, then summoned the other human king of the human race, Zhou Mu, as well as several Daluo Taoist priests. When Zhou Mu arrived at the human emperor palace, Feng Zichen handed the imperial edict to him. Zhou Mu passed this imperial edict to Jiang Huan. After all, he was the human king and had a noble status. He should be given the respect he deserved. If he sent any Taoist priests to deliver the imperial edict, it would seem that the human Dao imperial court did not value the human king. If the human emperor went personally, it would be a bit of a fuss. Therefore, Feng Zichen thought for a moment and decided to let Zhou Mu, who was also a human king, go. It was just right. They had the same status, so it would not appear to be too much of a fuss, nor would it appear to be too contemptuous. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhou Mu took the imperial edict and left. He would be very busy for the next period of time. After all, conferring the title of human king was not a small matter. It was not something that Feng Zichen could just casually issue an imperial edict. The imperial ancestral temple still had to make a lot of preparations. For example, they had to organize the human king's coronation ceremony, make a corresponding robe for the human king, build a hall for the new human king, prepare a carriage, and so on. These were all things that the imperial ancestral temple had to prepare. Although there was only a difference of one level between the human king and the duke, the treatment between them was like heaven and earth. The duke could only be the king of his own country. In the vast central divine province and the entire human race, he was not considered a big shot. However, the human king was different. He was the king of the entire human race, not the king of a city or country. His status rose from the ruler of a vassal state to the level of the entire human race. He would become the upper echelon of the human race and assist the human emperor in ruling the entire human race. He would have a certain amount of decision-making power. Everything the human king needed was also provided by the human race, and not by the vassal states. The human king could be said to be the upper echelons of the three realms. Even in the heaven realm, other than a few monarchs, the rest had to bow when they saw the human king. After years of preparation, the imperial ancestral temple finally finished all the preparations for the coronation ceremony. Zhou Mu brought a few human Taoist priests and hurried to the kingdom of Qi. At that moment, Feng Zichen did not have the time to pay attention to these things because the fake Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, who was also Dao ancestor Hong Jun, had already arrived at Renhuang City on a green ox. After thinking about it, Feng Zichen thought that Tao Zhu was an old man after all. As a young man, he should properly carry forward the virtue of respecting the old. Even if he took the lead to set an example for everyone, he still went out of the city to welcome him. Greetings, Dao ancestor. Outside Human Emperor City, Feng Zichen cupped his hands at Dao ancestor Hong Jun from afar as a greeting. As for whether calling Dao ancestor Hong Jun as Dao ancestor would expose his identity, that was not the case. Dao master, Dao ancestor, these two titles were actually similar. When outsiders heard it, they would think that Feng Zichen called Dao ancestor Hong Jun as Dao master and not Dao ancestor. However, any primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian could be called Dao master. There was nothing wrong with calling the three pure ones as Tao Masters. Greetings, Monarch. Tao Ancestor Hong Jun returned the greeting to Feng Zichen very naturally. To be honest, if Feng Zichen did not already know that the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was transformed by Tao Ancestor Hong Jun, he would definitely think that the other party was the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord and not someone else pretending to be him. They were really too similar. Not only in appearance, but also in demeanor and luck, they seemed to be carved out of the same mold as the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. With Tao Ancestor Hong Jun's ability, no one would be able to recognize him if he pretended to be someone else. There was only one flaw in Tao Ancestor Hong Jun. His realm was too high, far surpassing the Grand Pure Ones. If not for that, Feng Zichen would not have been able to recognize his true identity. After arriving beside Tao Ancestor Hong Jun, Feng Zichen could not help but exclaim softly. That was because he realized that behind Tao Ancestor Hong Jun stood a little Tao child with red lips and white teeth. He was about 5 or 6 years old and looked no different from a mortal child. However, his red hair was very eye-catching. Just now, the Tao child was hiding behind Tao Ancestor Hong Jun, but Feng Zichen did not notice him. He only discovered his existence when he walked closer. Who is this child? Looking at the child, Feng Zichen actually felt a sense of familiarity, as if he had seen the Tao child somewhere before. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Feng Zichen could not help but size up the Tao child. After all, the child was still young. Being stared at by a stranger like Feng Zichen, he could not help but reveal a frightened expression. He quietly hid behind Tao Ancestor Hong Jun and avoided Feng Zichen's burning gaze. The Tao child whispered to Tao Ancestor Hong Jun, "Master, who is this person? Master, who is this person? Why is his gaze so frightening? It's as if he can see through everyone's body." The moment the little Tao child said that, Feng Zichen felt very awkward. It was inappropriate to stare at a 5-year-old child with such a threatening gaze. However, the Tao child's performance also made Feng Zichen even more certain that he was extraordinary. If he was really an ordinary child, he would have fainted from fright after being stared at like that. How could he have such a performance? It's indeed my fault. I apologize to you, young master. Feng Zichen was straightforward and directly cupped his hands in salute to the little Taoist boy. As for the salute, the little Tao child could not accept the salute of the human emperor. If Feng Zichen saluted him, he would not be able to reincarnate for eternity. The consequences of the backlash of fate were very serious. Haha. Seemingly happy to see Feng Zichen suffer, Tao Ancestor Hong Jun chuckled. After a while, he said to the Tao child beside him, "This is the North Star Emperor, the Supreme Emperor of the human race. He is also the incomparably honorable great Taoist priests. He controls the gods of heaven and earth, the entire central divine region, the human race, and even the 10,000 races. He is the most powerful person in the 3 realms." When the little Tao child heard Tao Ancestor Hong Jun's introduction, he was so shocked that his mouth was wide open. He stood there in a daze and did not react for a long time. It was not until a long time later that he wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and asked Tao Ancestor Hong Jun in a fluster, "Master, Master, he is so powerful. Why didn't you say so earlier? Now that I have offended him, will he blame me?" Tao Ancestor Hong Jun patted the little Tao child's head and said with a smile, "Don't be afraid. You are not a human, nor a god, nor are you one of the 10,000 races. You have nothing to do with the central divine region. You and I are both outsiders. No matter how powerful he is, he can't control you." Hearing this, the bitter look on the little Tao child's face disappeared and was replaced by a smile. He said with a look of realization, "Haha, that's right. I am not a human, nor a god. I was not born in the central divine region. He can't control me. Haha." As he spoke, the little Taoist boy's laughter grew even more joyful. Seeing him like this, Feng Zichen could not help but scare him. "Little Tao child, although I can't control you, my cultivation is very high. There are less than 5 people in the 3 realms who can defeat me. If I want to kill you, I only need to blow a breath. Even if you are a world away from me, as long as you are still in the three realms, I can kill you. Are you afraid? Also, under my command, there are countless experts. With one order, regardless of whether it is the gods or the 10,000 races in the eldritch world, they will have to obey my orders. In that case, I only need to release the news that you have offended me. Then, there is simply no need for me to do anything. You will become the target of everyone's hatred. Everyone in the world will view you as an enemy and wish to tear you apart. As such, after offending me, are you afraid? It was not that Feng Zichen wanted to scare the little Dao child, but he had already recognized the little Dao child's identity. Looking at his head of red hair, the first thing that came to mind was red. Red. Other than Ancestor Hong Yun, who else could it be? The little Dao child who followed beside Dao Ancestor Hong Yun was Ancestor Hong Yun. However, it was not his actual body, but an incarnation of a strand of his divine consciousness. Moreover, all of his memories had been sealed by Dao Ancestor Hong Jun. He really looked no different from an ordinary child. Thus, the scene before his eyes had occurred. After being scared by Feng Zichen, the little Dao child's smile disappeared. He quickly hid behind Dao Ancestor Hong Jun and shouted at him, "I am not afraid. My master is a legendary saint, one of the few experts in the world. With him protecting me, you can't hurt me. I am not afraid of you." At this moment, Dao Ancestor Hong Jun smiled helplessly and said to Feng Zichen, "Emperor, don't scare him anymore. He is just a child." Child. Yes, child, he is just a child. After muttering a few words, Feng Zichen asked Dao Ancestor Hong Jun, "May I ask, what is the name of this little Dao child? I think he is to my liking. I want to keep him by my side and teach him personally for a period of time to make up for scaring him just now." With a smile, Dao Ancestor Hong Jun took little Hong Yun's hand and placed him beside him. He said to Feng Zichen seriously, "This child is called Hong Yun. He is the disciple of Poor Wei. Emperor, don't have any ideas about him. His future path has been arranged by Poor Wei for him. Emperor, you don't have to worry about him." He did not expect Dao Ancestor Hong Jun to be so direct and directly mention Hong Yun's identity. Feng Zichen did not know how to respond for a moment. After a while, Feng Zichen asked, "Why did Ancestor bring Hong Yun to the Central Divine Prefecture?" The Central Divine Prefecture is the territory of the human clan, but Hong Yun is a disciple of the Xian sect. Even if he wants to go, he should go to the Dongxing Divine Prefecture and not the Central Divine Prefecture. Ancestor, did you bring him here to seek revenge? Since the Dao Ancestor was so direct, Feng Zichen did not hide anymore. He directly asked why the Dao Ancestor had brought Hong Yun here. It was better to be direct. It saved him the effort of beating around the bush. If everyone was direct, there would be less trouble in this world. Dao Ancestor Hong Jun smiled again. Today, he especially loved to smile. Since he came here, he had been smiling as if he had encountered something happy. Or, he knew that there were not many opportunities for him to smile. He wanted to take advantage of this rare opportunity to smile cleanly. He had not smiled for countless years after Dao integration. After laughing for a while, Dao Ancestor Hong Jun said, "Emperor, don't be agitated. Poor Wei did not come here with evil intentions. Poor Wei said just now that Hong Yun is neither a human nor a god, nor a creature of all races. He was not born in the Central Divine Prefecture. Like Poor Wei, he is an outsider. He has nothing to do with the Emperor or the human clan." Hearing this, Feng Zichen really wanted to laugh. He wanted Hong Yun to have nothing to do with the human clan, but was it possible? After all, Hong Yun's innate fiend god body was still suppressed by the divine city of the human clan. He existed in the form of a perpetual motion machine, providing power for the operation of the human clan's protective array. Moreover, Hong Yun's Taoist field, Fire Cloud Cave, was still the seclusion place of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Even in the history of the human clan, Taoist Ziyun was recorded as a sinner of the human clan. He joined forces with the Chaos Demon God and attacked the human sovereign city when the human sovereign was not there. He was a traitor of the human clan and the untainted land. He was an unpardonable sinner. How could Hong Yun have nothing to do with the human clan? After sneering for a while, Feng Zichen said to Dao ancestor Hong Jun, "Dao ancestor, are you kidding? Who will believe that Hong Yun has nothing to do with the human clan? Have you asked the two sages of the West and Zenyuanzi? Do you think they will believe you?" At this time, Dao ancestor Hong Jun finally stopped smiling and said to Feng Zichen seriously, "Poor Wei never jokes. If I say that ancestor Hong Yun has nothing to do with the human clan, then they have nothing to do with the human clan. The fire cloud cave was given to the human clan by the heavenly Wei. If Hong Yun has a problem with it, he should ask the heavenly Wei instead of the human clan. The fire cloud cave is the karma between Hong Yun and the heavenly Wei. It has nothing to do with the human clan. As for Taoist Ziyun, he colluded with the chaos demon god and tried to disturb the untainted land. He is a sinner of the untainted land and is not tolerated by the heavenly Wei. He is suppressed by the human clan and can never escape. This is the punishment he deserves. However, Taoist Ziyun is Taoist Ziyun, and Taoist Hong Yun is Taoist Hong Yun. How can we confuse them? Hearing this, Feng Zichen understood what Dao ancestor Hong Jun meant. He wanted to end the karma between Hong Yun and the human clan on behalf of Hong Yun. The biggest karma between ancestor Hong Yun and the human clan was the fire cloud cave, the head of the untainted land. When the human clan obtained Hong Yun's Taoist field, they formed an inexplicable karma with him. But now, Dao ancestor Hong Jun said that the fire cloud cave was given to the human clan by the heavenly Wei. Even if there was a karma, it should be borne by the heavenly Wei. It had nothing to do with the human clan. In this way, the biggest karma between the human clan and Hong Yun would be gone. Secondly, the karma between Hong Yun and the human clan was caused by Taoist Ziyun. In the past, with the intervention of the two sages of the West, Hong Yun's innate true spirit was reincarnated into the human clan and became Taoist Ziyun. He tried to fight for the throne of the human emperor. Unfortunately, the two sages of the West's plan failed. Hong Yun was schemed against by Feng Zichen and was suppressed under the divine city of the human clan for eternity in the name of colluding with the chaos demon god. The hatred of being suppressed and humiliated was also a karma that would not end until one of them died. Chapter 872. However, Dao ancestor Hong Jun had said that Daoist Ziyun and ancestor Hong Yun were two different people. In that case, Daoist Ziyun's karma would have nothing to do with ancestor Hong Yun. According to Dao ancestor Hong Jun, ancestor Hong Yun had no karma with the human tribe. However, would Jin Yuanzi and the two sages of the Western sect agree to cut off the karma between ancestor Hong Yun and the human tribe? After all, they had spent a lot of effort on Daoist Ziyun. Would the three of them agree to erase the karma? After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen said, according to Dao ancestor Hong Yun has no karma with the human tribe. However, what would the two sages of the Western sect and the ancestor of the earthly immortals think about this? Dao ancestor Hong Jun replied, if they have any objections, they can come and find Poor Wei. Poor Wei will let them have no objections. Although Dao ancestor was Taishang Lao Jun, Feng Zichen still knew his true identity. The Way of Heaven also knew his true identity. Therefore, the one who made this promise was Dao ancestor Hong Jun and not Taishang Lao Jun. Feng Zichen was very sure of this. Otherwise, he would not be so easy to talk to. If Dao ancestor Hong Jun made a promise to Feng Zichen as Taishang Lao Jun, Feng Zichen would not believe a word. Taishang Lao Jun did not have the same reputation as Dao ancestor. Feng Zichen was sure that the two sages of the Western sect and the ancestor of the earthly immortals would not listen to his words. Therefore, when Dao ancestor Hong Jun spoke, Feng Zichen was already sure that he was talking to Dao ancestor Hong Jun and not Taishang Lao Jun. He had to be smart when talking to Dao ancestor. He was the most cunning old man in the untainted land. If he was not careful, he might be tricked by him. Therefore, he could not be too careful. Feng Zichen laughed and said, good, Dao ancestor is generous. If you really do what you said, then ancestor Hong Yun has no karma with the human tribe. After that, Feng Zichen pulled Dao Ancestor over and said, "Dao Ancestor, let's go in and talk." After they reached a consensus, Feng Zichen's attitude changed and he pulled Dao Ancestor towards the human emperor palace. This change made Dao Ancestor shook his head and laughed. After entering the main hall and sitting down, Feng Zichen finally had time and asked Dao Ancestor Hung Jun about his purpose of coming here. He asked, "What do you want?" 2. Dao Ancestor Hung Jun took a sip of the connate Dao tea served by the maid. He did not answer Feng Zichen's question. Instead, he said to him, "Sai, you really know how to enjoy life. You used the leaves of the world tree to make tea. I'm afraid this tea is better than the connate Dao enlightenment tea." Hearing this, Feng Zichen smiled and said, "It's rare that you like it. I'll give you a jar." After that, Feng Zichen ordered someone to take the world tea made from the leaves of the world tree from the treasury. It was just the leaves of the world tree. In the eyes of others, it was extremely precious, but in the eyes of Feng Zichen, it was just the same. He could have as many as he wanted. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Dao Ancestor Hung Jun first thanked Feng Zichen and then told him the purpose of his trip. "I heard that the human emperor city has built a new treasure room that collects all the ancient books in the central divine province. Poor Wei is not talented, but I'm willing to recommend myself to be the treasure room's keeper and manage this huge treasure room for you." The treasure room was an official organization that Feng Zichen had recently established. It was used to collect all the divine abilities and cultivation methods of the human race for future generations to refer to. Even the cultivation methods of the other races were kept in the treasure room. It could be said that since the establishment of the treasure room, it had become an important place for the human race. The ancient books placed in it could be said to be priceless. Since the treasure room was so important, the guards that were used to guard this place were naturally elites that were picked out from thousands of people. Not only were the guards patrolling outside connate Dao lords, but there were also several Daoyuo Taoist priests inside the treasure room. They would definitely not let outsiders take a step into this place. The manager of such an important place was even more important. Apart from being strong, he had to be responsible and have an extremely high status. In order to choose a suitable candidate, Feng Zichen had a headache for a long time. In the end, he planned to choose a suitable person from the important ministers of the three ancient emperors. The important ministers of the three emperors of the human race naturally had status and strength. It was suitable for them to guard the treasure room. However, before Feng Zichen could find someone, Dao Ancestor Hung Jun had taken the initiative to recommend himself. This made things difficult for Feng Zichen. If someone else recommended themselves, Feng Zichen might suspect that he was coveting the hundreds of connate Dao scriptures in the human race's treasure room. However, if this person was Dao Ancestor Hung Jun, Feng Zichen was not worried. With the Dao Ancestor's status and cultivation level, it was easy for him to write a connate Dao scripture with his eyes closed. Why would he covet the connate Dao scripture of the human race? Even if the human race placed the connate Dao scripture in front of him, he would not take a look at it. However, it was also because of this that Feng Zichen hesitated. He did not understand the purpose of the Dao Ancestor. If he did not come to spy on the connate Dao scripture, why would the Dao Ancestor ask him for this official position? After thinking silently for a while, Feng Zichen suddenly nodded and agreed. It's Zichen's honor that the Dao Ancestor is willing to guard the treasure room for the human race. It's also the honor of the human race. How can Zichen refuse? Later, Zichen will personally take the Dao Ancestor to the treasure room to take office. Just now, Feng Zichen suddenly understood the purpose of Dao Ancestor Hung Jun. The books collected by the human race were just a pretense. His real purpose was to obtain the spiritual incarnations of the great magicians. With an official position, the Dao Ancestor could better guide them and let them take fewer detours so that they could achieve the Dao faster. Feng Zichen also agreed with this. After all, those great magicians were unstable factors. It was fine for a short time, but if they stayed in the central God province for a long time, who knew what trouble they would cause? It was better to send them away as soon as possible. Moreover, Feng Zichen had other ideas. As an official of the human race, the Tao ancestor definitely had to live in the human race's residence. This gave people a chance to get in touch with him. The Tao ancestor was a supreme expert of the infinite Tao realm. If someone was lucky enough to get some guidance from the Tao ancestor, it would be enough for that person to benefit greatly. Usually, the Tao ancestor lived in the chaotic purple cloud palace. Even if outsiders wanted to get in touch with him, they did not have the chance. But now, it was different. The Tao ancestor lived in the human emperor city. As long as one wanted to, they could meet him. For ordinary people, it was a great opportunity to meet the Tao ancestor. If one was lucky enough to get his guidance, it would be even more perfect. As the saying goes, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. As long as the Tao ancestor lived in the human emperor city, there would always be a few lucky people who would get his guidance. Thank you, Emperor. Tao ancestor Hong Jun stood up and thanked Feng Zichen. Feng Zichen hurriedly returned the greeting, "You're too polite, Tao ancestor." Then, Feng Zichen brought Tao ancestor Hong Jun to the treasure room to take up his post. The new treasure room's guardian was personally led by the human emperor Feng Zichen to take up his post. His attitude was very friendly. It was completely different from the attitude he had when facing his subordinates. Instead, it was like a friend of equal status. Seeing this scene, anyone with a clear mind would know that the new treasure room's guardian was a big shot. Otherwise, the human emperor would not have treated him like this. After knowing Tao ancestor Hong Jun's noble identity, it would depend on one's own ability to get the opportunity from the Tao ancestor. Feng Zichen would not care. Everyone had their own fate. This could not be forced. After returning from the treasure room, Feng Zichen suddenly gave an order. He ordered the maid who prepared the seat for the Tao ancestor, the maid who served the tea to the Tao ancestor, and the guard who served the world tea to the Tao ancestor. In short, everyone who had come into contact with the Tao ancestor today was sent to the sky-gazing peak by Feng Zichen's order to cultivate under the world tree. This was the treatment that only the peerless geniuses of the human clan had. These people had only come into contact with the Tao ancestor, and their fates had already changed. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the geniuses of the human clan. It was indeed a great opportunity to serve the Tao ancestor tea, a seat, and a gift because the Tao master was the heavenly way. After serving the heavenly way, even a pig could become a pig god. Not to mention those guards and maids, who were already extraordinary. The path of proving the Tao began with coming into contact with the Tao ancestor. Moreover, Feng Zichen had another purpose for doing this. He wanted to use this method to hint to the clansmen in the human emperor's city that the Tao ancestor was extraordinary. Just by coming into contact with him, his fate had undergone an earth-shattering change. If he could receive his guidance, how extraordinary would it be? As long as someone noticed this scene, they would naturally guess Feng Zichen's thoughts and obtain a great opportunity. Opportunities were left for those who were prepared. Feng Zichen had already hinted so clearly. If no one understood, then they could only blame their bad luck. They could not blame anyone else. After all, Feng Zichen had told everyone that the new treasure room was the incarnation of the Tao ancestor. If he really did so, the Tao ancestor would immediately fall out with him. A few days later, the new human king of the human clan, Jiang Huan, came to the human emperor palace to visit the human emperor. Under the lead of the guards, Jiang Huan walked into the human emperor palace. As soon as he looked up, he saw the figure sitting on the throne. Like the sky, the earth, and the Tao, it was as if he was the greatest existence in the world, making people unable to have the will to resist. This was the human emperor, the most powerful existence of the human clan and one of the top 10 supreme masters in the three realms. This was not the first time Jiang Huan had seen Feng Zichen. The last time Jiang Huan saw Feng Zichen was when he had just become a Taoist priest and was conferred the title of Duke of Qi. Also in the human emperor palace, the human emperor received him, who had just become Duke of Qi, and gave him some encouragement. Before he left, the human emperor gave him a primordial spirit treasure and a large number of heavenly and earthly treasures, which allowed him to get rid of poverty and enter the middle class. At that time, Jiang Huan did not have a deep understanding of the human emperor's strength. He only knew that the human emperor was very strong, the kind that was ridiculously strong. But now, as he became a human king, his strength and luck improved, and he stepped into the sage-to-be level. Now that Jiang Huan saw the human emperor again, he finally felt the power of the human emperor. That was the Tao of the human realm, which had the power to easily crush him. Even a sage-to-be was just an ant in front of the human emperor, not much different from an ordinary person. Jiang Huan stepped forward silently and bowed. Jiang Huan greets your majesty. May your majesty be boundless and reach the supreme Tao realm as soon as possible. Get up. Helping Jiang Huan up, Feng Zichen said, you're here. How does it feel to be a human king? How is it different from when you were a duke? Jiang Huan's surname was Jiang, and he was a descendant of the archaic Jiang clan, the same clan as Jiang Xiong and Jiang Hui. He was their younger brother's descendant. Ever since Jiang Xiong and Jiang Hui went missing, Feng Zichen often blamed himself. Because of this, he took good care of the Jiang clan. Jiang Huan was from the Jiang clan. Perhaps because he loved the Jiang clan, Feng Zichen found him very pleasing to the eye. Jiang Huan replied respectfully, Your Majesty, the feeling of becoming a human king. How should I put it? I first felt very good. The dukes who used to be at the same level as me now have to bow when they see me. That feeling really made me feel like I was floating. After that, I felt a huge responsibility. Although the human race is strong, it's not like we don't have enemies in the three realms. In the North Continent, the demon race is eyeing the human race covetously. The Dongxing Divine Prefecture and the Aparagodania continent are also hostile to the human race. They don't want to see the human race prosper. After listening to Jiang Huan for a long time, Feng Zichen said, Not bad, not bad. This is the current situation of the human race. You've taken on the role very quickly. You've already begun to perform the duties of a human king. The so-called human king is to assist me in handling the human race's government affairs, formulate the human race's development policy, and select talents for the human race so that the human race will prosper. After giving Jiang Huan some instructions, Feng Zichen suddenly left the human emperor's palace with him. Follow me. The next moment, Jiang Huan felt the world around him change. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was no longer in the human emperor's palace. Instead, he appeared in front of the Tree of World. Every time a human king is born, I will give him an opportunity. Observing the Tree of World is the opportunity I'm giving you, Feng Zichen said to Jiang Huan. He threw him a token and left. The Tree of World was a treasure at the primordial chaos level. Even a saint would gain something from observing it, let alone a kid like Jiang Huan. He would definitely benefit greatly. As for the token, it was Feng Zichen's keepsake. If he wanted to observe the Tree of World, he had to have this token. Otherwise, he would be greeted by the Tree of World. Now, the Tree of World's strength had already reached the 9th heaven of primordial chaos. An ordinary primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian couldn't even withstand a blow from it. If it hit a sage-to-be, it could kill him in one blow. Standing in front of the Tree of World, Jiang Huan didn't immediately observe it. Because not long after Feng Zichen left, the Taoist priests of the Imperial Ancestral Temple came to look for him. Chapter 873. Now that your majesty is the human king, you should move from the Qi kingdom to the human emperor's city as soon as possible. Also, your majesty should choose an heir to inherit your title of Duke of Qi. After all, your majesty is already the human king. You should prioritize the affairs of the human race. You should let go of the affairs of the Qi kingdom if you can and try to leave them to your descendants. The Taoist priests of the Imperial Ancestral Temple came before Jiang Huan and said to him, That's right. Jiang Huan replied with a nod. He had already expected these things before he came. Before Jiang Huan left for the human emperor's city, Guanzhong had looked for him and told him some secrets of the world. For example, the matter of the various powerful beings using the human race to attain Tao. It was also at that time that Jiang Huan already knew that it would be difficult for him to interfere in the affairs of the Qi kingdom after he left for the human emperor's city. This was because the human emperor would not allow a human king to personally oversee the vassal states. If the Qi kingdom had a human king overseeing it, how could the other vassal states have a chance to rise? If a new overlord was not born, how could a new human king be born with the fate of the vassal states? In that case, how could the clones of other powerful divine abilities replicate Guanzhong's path and help a sovereign personage attain the Tao? Therefore, no matter what, Jiang Huan, who had become the human king, had to leave the Qi kingdom. If he stubbornly refused to leave, then not only would the human emperor not tolerate him, but the other powerful beings would not tolerate him either. Furthermore, Guanzhong, who had assisted him to become the human king, would not tolerate him either. Jiang Huan staying in the Qi kingdom was blocking the path of too many powerful beings. How many years had it been since Guanzhong and Jiang Huan were similar? Even if he assisted him to become the human king, it was only a matter of mutual benefit. How could he be willing to offend dozens or even hundreds of fellow Taoists for him? These words should have been said by Feng Zichen, but he was afraid that Jiang Huan would have some opinions and feel that the human emperor was forcing him with his power and leaving a bad impression on him. Therefore, the Taoist priests of the imperial ancestral temple stepped forward. Within a few years, there was news that Jiang Huan had abdicated and his son had succeeded him. The newly crowned Qi Guogua, with the blessing of the Qi kingdom, still had the power to match the Daluo Taoist priests. However, the new Duke of Qi was a newcomer after all. How could he be a match for the other old dukes? When Guanzhong was still alive, things were still fine. With him maintaining the situation, the state of Qi was still the overlord. However, as Guanzhong gradually grew old and was unable to maintain the situation, the power of the state of Qi began to decline. When Guanzhong passed away, the other vassal states began to stir, and the state of Qi was no longer the overlord. When Guanzhong was still alive, none of them had any ideas about the state of Qi. Only after Guanzhong's death did they make a move against the state of Qi and challenge its position as the overlord. After the state of Qi, the Jin state rose. However, this time, it was different. There were 5 great mystical abilities assisting Jin nation. Moreover, the person they chose to assist was not the current Duke of Jin, but the son of an exiled Duke of Jin who was not valued. In order to attain the Tao, these great mystical abilities began to make new attempts. They wanted to see if many people working together to assist the human king would allow everyone to attain the Tao at the same time. In any case, attaining the Tao did not rely on the merits of assisting the human king, but on the ideas they summed up. Through governing the people and interacting with the human Tao, they found their own shortcomings and perfected their Tao. When their Tao reached the point of perfection, it was time for them to attain the Tao. According to this theory, the amount of merits was not important. What was important was whether their ideas and their Tao could interact with the human Tao and find the flaws in it. Therefore, there was no conflict between having many people assisting and having one person assisting. On the contrary, with many people assisting, it was easier to help them attain the Tao through the mutual exchange of ideas. Daoist Daozhong attained the Tao through assisting the human king and gained the recognition of everyone. Because of this, many great mystical abilities chose to walk the same path as him. However, there were also some great mystical abilities who recognized Daozhong's method but did not want to walk the same path as him. Therefore, some people traveled between countries to search for their own way of attaining the Tao. It was also at this time that Ziru gradually showed his talent. Ziru combined the founding ceremony of the Holy Emperor and proposed a theory with benevolence, forgiveness, sincerity, and filial piety as the core values. This was the theory of Confucianism. The path of Confucianism was to be wise in reading, pay attention to etiquette, pay attention to benevolence, and have righteousness in one's heart. Confucianism emphasized the moral cultivation of a gentleman, emphasized that benevolence and etiquette complemented each other, valued the 5 relationships and family ethics, advocated education and benevolence, attacked tyranny, and tried to rebuild the order of etiquette and music. It was rich in ideals and humanistic spirit. Ever since Ziru was born, he had never cultivated. However, with the establishment of Confucianism, the aura of righteousness appeared out of thin air and poured into his body, causing him to naturally possess mystical abilities. The aura of righteousness, the righteousness of heaven and earth. As long as one had righteousness in their heart and was upright, they could obtain the power to crush everything. And this was the power that Ziru possessed. After the establishment of Confucianism, Ziru's body merged with heaven and earth and reached the realm of oneness of heaven and man. Naturally, he possessed three powers. The first was etiquette. Its original meaning was to hold ceremonies and worship gods to pray for blessings. Etiquette in shoes, so it was a blessing to the gods. The etiquette of husband, the scripture of heaven, the righteousness of the earth, and the conduct of the people. Cultivating the six etiquettes was to restrain the people. The six etiquettes were crown, dusk, funeral, sacrifice, hometown, and meeting. The crown, marriage, court, betrothal, funeral, sacrifice, guest and host, hometown drinking, and military. These were the 9 etiquettes. The power of etiquettes could regulate people's behavior. Therefore, the power of etiquettes was that words were law, and it had the ability to command the rules of heaven and earth. Once words were spoken, heaven and earth would follow, and nothing would dare to be an enemy. The second was benevolence. Benevolence was a moral concept with a very broad meaning. Its core was that people loved each other, and Ziru used it as the highest moral standard. Benevolence was love. Benevolence meant that people loved each other, so they were benevolent. Love from top to bottom was benevolence. Gentleness was the foundation of benevolence. Benevolence meant that people loved each other with joy. Benevolence meant that people loved each other. Therefore, the power of benevolence could erase the enemy's hostility, killing intent, and other negative emotions, so that people could get along with each other peacefully. Once the power of benevolence came out, it would turn everyone in the world into a friend, and no one would be an enemy. Therefore, benevolence was invincible. The third was righteousness. May I ask what righteousness was? It was said, it's hard to say, it's chi, it's great and strong, it's beneficial and harmless, and it's stuffed between heaven and earth. It's chi, it's compatible with righteousness and Tao, it's not, it's discouragement. It's born from righteousness, not obtained from righteousness. If there's something that's not in the heart, it's discouragement. There was righteousness in heaven and earth, and all kinds of things were formed. Below it were rivers and mountains, and above it were the sun and stars. It was called righteousness to people, abundant and filling the sky. Righteousness was the righteousness of heaven and earth, it's great and strong. Therefore, once righteousness came out, all the bad forces in heaven and earth would be suppressed by it, and it would be difficult to form power. After Confucianism was established, Ziru also had the power to protect himself. Then, he left Emperor's city and traveled among the various countries. He began to spread his theory, persuade people to be good, and set etiquette for the various countries. As for Ziru, all the monarchs of the vassal states knew that he was a big shot from Emperor's city. These monarchs did not dare to offend him. However, these people had been dominating their places for a long time and were used to being free and unfettered. How could they stand the restrictions of etiquette? Therefore, they treated Ziru with good food and drink. No matter what he said, they would pat their chests and agree. However, after that, they would continue to do what they were supposed to do. As for what they had promised Ziru earlier, no one took it to heart. You say what you want, and I do what I want. Whatever you say, I'll listen, but I won't do it. This was the current attitude of the monarchs of the various vassal states toward Ziru. It was difficult to get them to respect him. Difficult. They were all a group of old foxes. Anyway, Ziru could not do anything to them, so why would they be afraid of a weak scholar like Ziru? They would just provide him with good food and drink. They would definitely not let him suffer the slightest grievance. This could be considered as giving Emperor City an explanation. Moreover, when Ziru saw that things were not going well, he would naturally leave. Otherwise, what was the point of continuing to stay? Continuing to accomplish nothing? Why did Ziru, Dao Ziru, leave Emperor City? It was because the big shots of Emperor City could not stand him, so they chased him out. The younger generation could accept the etiquette set by Ziru, but those of the older generation, such as the Taoist priests, existed with the heavens and with the Tao. How could they stand the restrictions of these etiquette? However, they also knew that the etiquette set by Zero was for the good of the human race. He used etiquette to limit the evil in the heart, and thus advocated that everyone be good. Therefore, although they did not like Zero's etiquette, they would not speak out against it. They just watched coldly from the side. However, they did not go to Zero, but Zero came to them. As a senior, Yan Qi should take the lead and be the first to abide by these etiquette. These big shots of Emperor City were annoyed by Zero, but they did not dare to do anything to him. Everyone knew that Zero's identity was not simple. Putting aside the question of whether they could defeat him, if they really dared to do anything, they would probably be suppressed by Emperor City the moment they made a move. Therefore, everyone was afraid of Zero, but they could not beat him or scold him. In the end, they had no choice but to join forces and chase him out of Emperor City. It was said that the etiquette of the vassal states had collapsed. It was a good place for Zero to preach his teachings. After he had educated the vassal states, it would not be too late for Zero to come back and educate Emperor City. Knowing that he had angered the public, Zero did not insist. He walked towards the vassal states and began his journey of traveling through the various states. The first stop of Zero's journey was his birthplace, the state of Lu. Lu Ho was first surprised by Zero's arrival. Then, when he heard that Zero was here to contribute to his hometown, Lu Ho was even more surprised. It had been a long time since Jiang Huan, the Duke of Qi, became a human king. It had basically spread among the vassal circles. Therefore, everyone knew that the divine thought incarnations of some powerful beings were hidden among the humans. They were prepared to choose suitable candidates from the vassal states to help him become a human king and achieve his own great Tao. Lu Ho had also fantasized that such a good thing would happen to him. After all, who did not covet the position of human king? But fantasies were just fantasies. Lu Ho was also a member of his own family and knew his own matters. With his abilities, he could at most become an earl. Now that he could become a marquis, it was all because of the power behind him. It had nothing to do with his own abilities. It was difficult for him to become a duke. How could he aspire for the position of human king? But he never thought that fate was so wonderful. The good thing of being assisted by the divine thought incarnation of a powerful being directly fell on him, Lu Ho. Lu Ho still remembered the various strange phenomena when Zero was born. In his eyes, Zero was the so-called reincarnation of a powerful being. Moreover, he was a peak powerful being. Zero was an existence that could startle the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the current sage emperor, and even Her Highness Nuwa when he was just born. If such an existence could not be considered a powerful being, then who else in this world could be called a powerful being? Because Lu Ho knew that Zero was the reincarnation of a powerful being, when he heard that Zero had specially returned to assist him in achieving hegemony, it was easy to imagine how excited he was. His excitement was beyond words. He only knew that he had finally made it and obtained a great opportunity. However, Lu Ho's happiness did not last long. That was because he could not stand Zero anymore. Lu Ho was a second-generation heir. He had the bad nature that many people had. He was greedy for pleasure and did not seek to improve himself. He was not bad, but he was definitely not good. As for Zero, he was determined to mold Lu Ho into a famous ruler, a moral role model, using the highest standards to hold him to. First, he had to change Lu Ho's greedy nature and make him have the desire to improve himself again. Before Zero came, Lu Ho did not need to deal with government affairs. He just needed to eat and drink every day. However, after Zero came, he had endless matters to deal with every day. He did not even have time to enjoy himself. That was right. The country of Lu's government affairs had been neglected for so long. How could it be so easy to deal with them all at once? It was normal to be busy in the beginning. However, with Lu Ho's character, how could he endure such things? In the beginning, Lu Ho wanted something new and worked hard for a few days. However, it did not take long for him to solidify. He no longer worked hard and continued to indulge in pleasure. Zero tried to persuade him a few times, but he was evaded. At this time, Lu Ho also accepted his fate. He knew that he did not have the opportunity to become a human king. Even if the heavens placed an opportunity in front of him, he would not be able to grasp it. He would only be like this for the rest of his life. He could only eat and wait for death. Struggle. That was impossible. Did he not enjoy eating, drinking, and playing? Was he not happy ruling over a region? Why did he have to take things too hard and struggle? Helpless, Zero continued to persuade Lu Ho. However, Zero used all his means and even talked until his mouth was sore, but he still could not persuade Lu Ho to change his mind and work hard again. In the end, perhaps because Zero was tired of persuading him, Lu Ho simply expressed that he was already like this. There was no saving him. If someone like him were to become a human king, that would be the greatest danger to the human race. Lu Ho had already given up on himself. P.S. I updated again today. Chapter 874. The anti-theft chapter will be changed in 20 minutes. The main reason is to maintain full attendance. Right now, full attendance is the only motivation for me to continue writing. Without full attendance, I will not be able to write one chapter a day. With that said, there was nothing left to say. In the end, Ziru left the country of Lu angrily. Due to his identity, no matter which country Ziru went to, the country lords treated him with respect and took good care of him. No one could find fault with him. However, this was not what Ziru wanted. Ziru came here to spread his teachings. He wanted to use etiquette, benevolence, and righteousness as the foundation to create a harmonious society. However, although Ziru's method was useful, it was difficult to see results in a short period of time. As such, the country lords did not accept it. They placed more importance on the school of military and legalism. This was enough for them to become strong in a short period of time and become overlords. Confucianism was not liked by the country lords, but it was respected by some young people. As such, Ziru gained many followers who traveled with him to various countries. Over time, these followers became Ziru's disciples. As time passed, he had more and more disciples. It was said that he had 3,000 disciples, all of whom were elites of the human race. As a result, although the Confucian school wasn't liked by the various monarchs, due to the large number of disciples it had become a colossus. However, because Confucianism was so powerful, it attracted the displeasure of many people. For example, a person called Yang Zhu. He did not like Confucianism and felt that Confucianism's selflessness was not desirable. Yang Zhu's philosophy was completely different from Confucianism. Confucianism was based on benevolence and could sacrifice oneself for others. However, Yang Zhu's philosophy was to value oneself and be reborn. It could also be called for oneself. Yang Zhu said, the people of ancient times did not harm themselves to benefit the world. Knowing that the world worshipped them, they did not take it. No one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was governed. Everyone said that Yang Zhu was stingy, but they misinterpreted his meaning and forgot the next sentence. If you want me to harm others to benefit myself, I will not do it. In other words, Yang Zhu believed that one could not harm others to benefit oneself, and there was no need to sacrifice oneself for others. Furthermore, he urged everyone not to harm others and not to sacrifice themselves for others. As long as everyone cares for themselves, does not invade each other, values their own lives and respects the lives of others, the world can be governed. Moreover, Yang Zhu objected to the idea of imitating the previous kings. In his opinion, blindly abandoning the current people and praising the ancient kings was like praising the withered bones of the dead. Such a viewpoint could be said to be shocking in the human race. After all, the mainstream of the current world still regarded Yao, Shun, Yu, and the other former kings as saints. Moreover, they advocated imitating the former kings and saints. But Yang Zhu didn't think so. He advocated building a new society, and the basic principle of this society was for oneself and not for others. That is to say, no one is harmed in the slightest, no one is harmed in the world is ruled. In fact, in Yang Zhu's opinion, these two aspects were the core. No one should pluck a single hair for the sake of benefiting the world, and no one should be greedy for the sake of plucking a single hair. Because of this, Yang Zhu believed that life was more important than anything else. People should not look down on their own lives, nor should they violate the lives of others. Therefore, Yang Zhu emphasized extreme personal interests and did not pay attention to the interests of the country. This kind of thinking eventually evolved into the theory of no monarch, which was not tolerated by the world. Other than for oneself, Yang Zhu also had his own views on life and death. At this point, there was nothing more to say. In the end, he left behind a sentence that rotten wood cannot be carved, and angrily left the country of Lu. After that, because of his identity, no matter which country Ziru went to, the country's king treated him with respect and took good care of him. No one could find fault with him. However, this was not what Ziru wanted. Ziru came to preach his own theory, using etiquette, benevolence, and righteousness as the foundation. He wanted to create a harmonious society. Unfortunately, although Ziru's method was useful, it was difficult to see results in a short period of time. Therefore, the country's kings did not accept it. They valued the theory of the military and legalism more. It was enough for them to become powerful in a short period of time and strive for the position of overlord. Confucianism was not liked by the country's kings, but it was highly respected by some young people. Because of this, Ziru gained many followers who traveled with him to various countries. As time passed, these followers became Ziru's disciples, and as time passed, he gained more and more disciples. It was said that he had 3,000 disciples, and they were all elites of the human race. As such, although Confucianism was not liked by the country's kings, because of the many disciples it had, it became a colossus. However, because Confucianism was so powerful, it attracted the displeasure of many people. For example, a person called Yang Zhu. He disliked Confucianism and felt that Confucianism's selflessness was not desirable. Yang Zhu's philosophy was completely different from Confucianism. Confucianism was based on benevolence, and they could sacrifice themselves for others. However, Yang Zhu's philosophy was to value oneself and rebirth, which could also be called for oneself. Yang Zhu said, the people of ancient times did not harm themselves to benefit the world, they knew that the world worshipped them and did not take them. No one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was ruled. Everyone said that Yang Zhu was stingy, but they misinterpreted Yang Zhu's meaning and completely forgot the next sentence. If you want me to harm others to benefit myself, I will not do it. In other words, Yang Zhu believed that one could not harm others to benefit oneself, and there was no need to sacrifice oneself for others. Moreover, he called on everyone not to harm others and not to sacrifice themselves for others. As long as everyone cared about themselves and did not harm others, and everyone valued their own lives and respected the lives of others, the world could be ruled. Moreover, Yang Zhu was against imitating the previous kings. In his view, blindly abandoning the people of the present and praising the ancient kings was like praising the bones of the dead. Such a view could be said to be shocking in the human race. After all, the mainstream of the present world still regarded Yao Shanyu and the other kings as saints, and they advocated imitating the previous kings and saints. However, Yang Zhu did not think this way. He advocated building a new society, and the basic principle of this society was for oneself and not for others. This was his principle of no one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was ruled. In truth, in Yang Zhu's view, these two aspects were the core. No one should pluck a single hair to benefit the world, and no one should covet the world's benefits to pluck a single hair. Because of this, Yang Zhu believed that life was more important than anything else. People should not look down on their own lives, and they should not infringe on the lives of others. Therefore, Yang Zhu emphasized extreme personal benefits, and did not pay attention to the interests of the country. This kind of thinking eventually evolved into the theory of no monarch, which was not tolerated by the world. Other than for oneself, Yang Zhu also had his own views on life and death. At this point, there was nothing more to say. In the end, he said that rotten wood could not be carved, and angrily left the country of Lu. After that, because of his identity, no matter which country Ziru went to, the kings treated him with respect and took good care of him, and no one could find fault with him. However, this was not what Ziru wanted. Zero came here to promote his own theory, based on etiquette, benevolence, and righteousness, and to create a harmonious society. However, although Zero's method was useful, it was difficult to see the results in a short period of time. Therefore, the kings did not accept it. They valued the doctrines of the military and legalism more, and it was enough to make them strong in a short period of time, and from there, strive for the position of overlord. Confucianism was not liked by the kings, but it was respected by some young people. As such, Zero gained many followers, and they followed him to travel the various countries. As time passed, these followers became Zero's disciples, and as time passed, he had more and more disciples. It was said that he had 3,000 disciples, and they were all elites of the human race. As a result, although the Confucian school wasn't liked by the various monarchs, due to the large number of disciples it had become a colossus. However, because Confucianism was so strong, many people did not like it. For example, a person called Yang Zhu. He really did not like Confucianism, and he felt that Confucianism's selflessness was not desirable. Yang Zhu's philosophy was completely different from Confucianism. Confucianism was based on benevolence, and they could sacrifice themselves for others. However, Yang Zhu's philosophy was to value oneself and rebirth, which could also be called for oneself. Yang Zhu said, the people of ancient times did not harm themselves for the benefit of the world. They knew that the world worshipped them and did not take them. No one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was ruled. Everyone said that Yang Zhu was stingy, but they misinterpreted Yang Zhu's meaning and completely forgot the next sentence. If you want me to harm others for my own benefit, I will not do it. In other words, Yang Zhu believed that one could not harm others for one's own benefit, and there was no need to sacrifice oneself for others. Moreover, he called on everyone not to harm others and not to sacrifice themselves for others. As long as everyone cared for themselves and did not harm others, and everyone valued their own lives and respected the lives of others, the world could be ruled. Moreover, Yang Zhu was against following the previous kings in everything. In his view, blindly abandoning the people of the present and praising the ancient kings was like praising the bones of the dead. Such a view could be said to be shocking in the human race. After all, the mainstream of the present world still regarded Yao Shanyu and the other kings as saints, and they advocated imitating the previous kings and saints. However, Yang Zhu did not think this way. He advocated building a new society, and the basic principle of this society was for oneself and not for others. This was his principle of no one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was ruled. In truth, in Yang Zhu's view, these two aspects were the core. No one should pluck a single hair for the benefit of the world, and no one should covet the benefits of the world for the sake of plucking a single hair. Because of this, Yang Zhu believed that life was more important than anything else. No one should look down on their own lives, and no one should harm the lives of others. Therefore, Yang Zhu emphasized extreme personal benefits, and did not pay attention to the interests of the country. This kind of thinking eventually evolved into the theory of no monarch, which was not tolerated by the world. Other than for oneself, Yang Zhu also had his own views on life and death. At this point, there was nothing more to say. In the end, he said that rotten wood could not be carved, and angrily left the country of Lu. After that, because of his identity, no matter which country Zero went to, the kings treated him with respect and took good care of him, and no one could find fault with him. However, this was not what Zero wanted. Zero came here to promote his own theory, based on etiquette, benevolence, and righteousness, and to create a harmonious society. However, although Zero's method was useful, it was difficult to see results in a short period of time. Therefore, the kings did not accept it. They valued the doctrines of the military and legalism more, which were enough to make them strong in a short period of time, and from there, strive for the position of overlord. Confucianism was not liked by the kings, but it was respected by some young people. As such, Zero gained many followers, and they followed him to travel the various countries. As time passed, these followers became Zero's disciples, and as time passed, he had more and more disciples. It was said that he had 3,000 disciples, and they were all elites of the human race. As a result, although the Confucian school wasn't liked by the various monarchs, due to the large number of disciples it had become a colossus. However, because Confucianism was so strong, many people did not like it. For example, a person called Yang Zhu. He really did not like Confucianism, and he felt that Confucianism's selflessness was not desirable. Yang Zhu's philosophy was completely different from Confucianism. Confucianism was based on benevolence, and they could sacrifice themselves for others. However, Yang Zhu's philosophy was for oneself and to be reborn, which could also be called for oneself. Yang Zhu said, the people of ancient times did not harm themselves for the benefit of the world. They knew that the world worshipped them and did not take them. No one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was ruled. Everyone said that Yang Zhu was stingy, but they misinterpreted Yang Zhu's meaning and completely forgot the next sentence. If you want me to harm others for my own benefit, I will not do it. In other words, Yang Zhu believed that one could not harm others for one's own benefit, and there was no need to sacrifice oneself for others. Moreover, he called on everyone not to harm others and not to sacrifice themselves for others. As long as everyone cared for themselves and did not harm others, and everyone valued their own lives and respected the lives of others, the world could be ruled. Moreover, Yang Zhu opposed everything that followed the previous kings. In his view, blindly abandoning the people of the present and praising the ancient kings was like praising the bones of the dead. Such a view could be said to be shocking in the human race. After all, the mainstream of the present age still regarded Yao Shanyu and the other kings as saints, and they advocated imitating the previous kings and saints. However, Yang Zhu did not think this way. He advocated building a new society, and the basic principle of this society was for oneself and not for others. This was his principle of no one harmed themselves, no one harmed the world, and the world was ruled. In truth, in Yang Zhu's view, these two aspects were the core. No one should pluck a single hair for the benefit of the world, and no one should covet the benefits of the world for the sake of plucking a single hair. Because of this, Yang Zhu believed that life was more important than anything else. No one should look down on their own lives, and no one should infringe on the lives of others. Thus, Yang Zhu emphasized extreme personal benefits, and did not pay attention to the interests of the country. This kind of thinking eventually evolved into the theory of no ruler, which was not tolerated by the present age. Besides, for oneself, Yang Zhu also had his own views on life and death. Chapter 875. If you finish reading these Khanate Taoist scriptures and understand them, the confusion in your heart will be solved. Speaking of this, Tao ancestor Hong Jun seemed to have thought of something. He paused for a while before continuing. There's something that the poor Wei has to tell you. These Taoist scriptures were created by Gaochen. If you don't understand them after reading them, it's fine. But if you do, you'll owe Gaochen a huge favor. So, whether you want to read these Taoist scriptures or not, you have to consider carefully. Tao ancestor Hong Jun was a particular person. He did not use Feng Zichen's things as a favor. Instead, he pushed all the credit to Feng Zichen. It was indeed difficult to repay the favor of achieving Tao. It was obvious from the attitude of the two sages of the West towards ancestor Hong Yun. Because they could not repay the karma of achieving Tao, they simply watched ancestor Hong Yun die. They did not even take the initiative to revive ancestor Hong Yun. However, Lai Ko did not hesitate too much. Achieving Tao was the most important thing now. Compared to achieving Tao, everything else was insignificant. He did not have to care too much about it. Therefore, Lai Ko said nonchalantly, if these Taoist scriptures can really solve the confusion in my heart and help me achieve Tao, then it's only right that I owe you a favor. But I don't know why you're interested in the Khanate 5 Grands. Looking at the number of Taoist scriptures, you've obviously put in a lot of effort. But you're obviously not cultivating the Tao of the Khanate 5 Grands. To be honest, Lai Ko could not understand Feng Zichen's actions. Everyone knew that the human emperor cultivated the Tao of Pangu. He walked the path of achieving Tao through strength. So, why did he study the Tao of the Khanate 5 Grands for no reason? Moreover, the human emperor's research results were even more profound than Reiku's, an innate saint formed from the essence of the Khanate 5 ties. He had already reached the level of origin. Tao ancestor Hong Jun smiled and said, "You don't know about this." For some reason, there was a period of time when Gaochen and Ziwei were frantically searching for the Khanate Five Grand's origins. For this, they even turned the primordial world upside down several times. It's only because you've been cultivating in seclusion in the chaos beyond the heavens that you've never stepped foot into the untainted world. Otherwise, the North Star and the Purple Star would have found you long ago. Later on, the two of them really couldn't find any traces of the Khanate Five Cosmos origins. Seeing that they couldn't do anything about it, they had no choice but to settle for the next best thing, which was to obtain the Khanate Five Cosmos origins through the method of constantly creating and destroying worlds. It was at this time that the two of them mastered the Tao of the Grand Cosmos Five Cosmos and cultivated it to greater success. Ziwei has an indifferent nature and doesn't have many subordinates. After comprehending the Tao of the Khanate Five ties, she put them aside. However, the North Star is different. He has a large group of humans behind him. Therefore, after he comprehended the Tao of the Pre-Celestial Five Grand Cosmos, he spent tens of thousands of years deducing several pre-celestial Taoist scriptures to explain the Tao of the Pre-Celestial Five Grand Cosmos. After that, he left the scripture with the human race, hoping that there would be geniuses among the human race's descendants who could comprehend the wonders of the Khanate Five manifestations. Those pre-celestial Taoist scriptures are what you see in front of you. Back then, in order to collect the Khanate Five Grand Cosmos origins, Feng Zichen and Ziwei would go to the chaos outside the heavens to create worlds whenever they were free. However, usually, when the worlds were about to be formed, the two of them would deliberately make mistakes, causing the worlds that had yet to be born to be destroyed. During the creation and destruction of the worlds, many Khanate Five Grand Cosmos origins would be born, and the two of them would collect them. In order to collect the Khanate Five Grand Cosmos origins, the two of them would often create worlds in the chaos outside the heavens. Such frequent movements could be hidden from others, but not from Tao ancestor Hong Jun. For this reason, Tao ancestor Hong Jun knew about this. However, what the two of them did was not harmful to the primeval world. Therefore, although the Tao ancestor saw it, he did not stop them. It was a tacit approval of their actions. Tao ancestor Hong Jun said it casually, but when Lai Ko heard this, he broke out in a cold sweat. Great Emperor Ziwei and Great Emperor North Star had worked together to search for the Khanate Five Grand Cosmos origins. Although he knew that even if the two gods knew about his origins, they would not attack him for no reason, he was still scared. But Lai Ko was still scared. After all, being targeted by two Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals at the same time, who wouldn't panic if it happened to any great medium? Not everyone was as careless as Feng Zichen. Even if he was targeted by the Chaos Demon God, who was 3,000 realms higher than primordial Chaos Daluo Jinxian, he would still eat and drink as usual, as if he did not care at all. After a long time, Lai Ko smiled bitterly and said, "I really did not expect that I would avoid a big trouble after not seeing the primeval world for a long time." Tao ancestor Hong Jun used his walking stick to hit him and said, "What are you afraid of? They did not attack you." As if awakened by Tao ancestor Hong Jun's walking stick, Lai Ko suddenly stopped panicking and did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he took the scriptures and read them. At this moment, the incarnation of a great medium looked at the central divine prefecture and saw the heavenly Tao purple clouds flashing in the Emperor city. A look of confusion appeared in his eyes. This is strange. The Emperor city is an important place for the human path, and the Emperor is the ruler of the human path. There should only be the human path purple clouds in this city. Why would there be heavenly Tao purple clouds? The great medium was confused. Although the human path purple clouds looked exactly the same as the heavenly Tao purple clouds, their auras were completely different. The human path purple clouds were gorgeous and noble, and had the appearance of all living things. The heavenly Tao purple clouds were high above, indifferent and emotionless. It was easy to distinguish between the two, and he would definitely not be mistaken. Could it be? With a guess in his heart, the great medium did not hesitate and directly sent his spiritual incarnation to the Emperor city. The spiritual incarnation of this great medium was called Zhou Yan. He cultivated the theory of yin-yang and the five elements. He used yin-yang and the five elements to analyze the laws of heaven and earth and the changes of the universe. From there, he created a calendar to avoid natural disasters between heaven and earth. This allowed ordinary people to have the ability to avoid natural disasters. This was Zhou Yan's theory. Yin-yang and the five elements could barely be considered the Tao of algebra. It could be used for deduction, but it covered more areas. Zhou Yan spent several months before he finally arrived at Emperor City, covered in dust from the long journey. Then, he used the power of yin-yang and the five elements to study the Emperor City for several days. He finally determined the place where the heavenly Tao purple clouds appeared that day. It was the treasure room. Zhou Yan was not in a hurry to go to the treasure room. He first tidied up his clothes and hair that were slightly messy from the long journey. After tidying them up, he walked in the direction of the treasure room. The treasure room was a large library that Feng Zichen had prepared for the human race. Naturally, it was open to all humans. Any human could enter. However, although they could enter, if they wanted to read inside, they could not do so without merit points. Except for the most basic cultivation methods of foundation establishment, which were free for human beings to borrow, all the other cultivation methods in the treasure room had to be paid. It wasn't spirit stones or nature pills, but something called merit points. After all the remarkable techniques and techniques of the human race were recorded in the treasure room. There was no lack of supreme remarkable techniques and innate supreme Taoist scriptures. If everyone could borrow them casually, how could the value of these remarkable techniques and Taoist scriptures be reflected? Therefore, Feng Zichen worked together with the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, as well as all the great beings of the human race, and even all the innate Taoist priests, to set up the merit point system. As the name suggested, merit points were something that could only be obtained if one performed meritorious deeds for the human race. The so-called merit points included killing enemies and eliminating evil, but it was not limited to these. To put it simply, anything that was beneficial to the development of the human race would be rewarded with merit points. If you could improve the foundation establishment pill and make its effects stronger, even if it was only by a tiny bit, it would be a great contribution to the human race. Because with the circulation of the improved foundation establishment pill recipe, who knows how many people would benefit from it? And this was how merit points could be obtained. Of course, although this method was good, it was still necessary to prevent people from impersonating others. After all, benefits moved people's hearts. Merit points were the hard currency of the human race and were even more important than merit. It was inevitable that people would impersonate others' achievements in order to obtain merit points. Therefore, a method was needed to prevent this from happening. This was not a problem for the higher-ups of the human race. Feng Zichen alone was enough to set up the merit point system. There was no need for the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, or even all the innate Taoist priests of the human race to work together. The reason for this was that they were not setting up the merit point system, but a system that was complementary to the merit point system. Feng Zichen called it the Lord God. Yes, its function was the same as the Lord God in the Lord God space. It could be used to issue missions, calculate rewards, and so on. It even had the ability to traverse the heavens. However, traversing the heavens here was not to the so-called movie world, but to the various small worlds and mysterious mystic realms that were born with the creation of the 3 realms. It could even be on the countless small islands outside the 5 major continents. When the 3 realms were reborn, the natural source of heaven and earth was so rich that it made people's hair stand on end. Naturally, various mystic realms and countless small worlds were born. Other things aside, in the central divine province alone, there were countless mystic realms that were born. It was to prevent these secret realms and even newborn worlds from being taken over by the powerful forces near their birthplaces. It was also to give the ordinary clansmen a chance to rise up, so that they would not despair or even lie flat on the ground. It was also to prevent the current human race from entering the stage of class consolidation. Feng Zichen personally ordered that all the mystic realms and new worlds in the central divine province belonged to the human race collectively. No forces or even individuals could occupy them privately. Violators would be severely punished. In fact, even with Feng Zichen's prestige, the implementation of this order was not smooth. Because benefits moved people's hearts. In the mystic realms of heaven and earth, there were countless opportunities that could allow people to reach the heavens in one step. In the new worlds, there were even innate divine fetuses and innate spiritual treasures. Even the innate Taoist priests would be tempted by such opportunities, let alone others. For these benefits, many people chose to take the risk and did not hesitate to violate Feng Zichen's order to take it for themselves. Unfortunately, what greeted them was not the law that did not punish the majority, but Feng Zichen's thunderous means. Feng Zichen was not joking. Anyone or force that violated this order was killed by him with thunderous means. Among them, there were several human geniuses who were comparable to innate god-fiends, and even an innate Taoist priest. It was also because of the death of an innate Taoist priest that this order was carried out. Even the innate Taoist priest would die if he violated the order, not to mention others. With the death of the innate Taoist priest as a deterrent, most people restrained their thoughts that they should not have. However, there were still a small number of people who bowed and continued to do as they wished. For this reason, Feng Zichen specially imitated the Heavenly Court's supreme heavenly mirror and created the heavenly mirror to examine the entire human race. But even so, there were still many cases of private occupation of mystic realms. In the end, Feng Zichen was forced to join forces with the masters of the human race to create the Master God system. All the mystic realms and new worlds in the Central Divine Province were under its jurisdiction. It was responsible for allocating resources, issuing missions, and even issuing rewards. It was also because of the appearance of the Master God system that there were no more cases of forces or individuals occupying mystic realms of heaven and earth and new worlds in the Central Divine Province. This was because when creating the Master God system, Feng Zichen had integrated part of the authority of the Central Divine Province into the Master God system. The entire Central Divine Province was created by Feng Zichen. It could be said that he had absolute control over the Central Divine Province. In other words, everything in the Central Divine Province, except for the human race, including the new mystic realms of heaven and earth and worlds, belonged to Feng Zichen. Why was Feng Zichen not afraid that the human race would betray him? Of course, it was because the human race could not do it. Their food, clothing, daily necessities, shelter. Everything that the human race had was given to them by Feng Zichen. How could the human race betray Feng Zichen? This karma was too great for the human race to repay. Therefore, the human race could not betray Feng Zichen at all. Once they betrayed him, what awaited the human race was destruction. It was because he knew this that Feng Zichen was so dedicated to developing the human race. There was no such thing as unconditional love in this world. Feng Zichen was good to the human race because the human race was tied to him. They were his most loyal force. Was it wrong to work hard to develop a force that would not betray him? Of course not. Those who thought it was wrong were the ones with problems in their heads. It was because of the integration of part of the authority of the Central Divine Province that whenever a new mystic realm or world was born in the Central Divine Province, the Master God system was usually the first to detect it and take it under its control. This way, it prevented outsiders from occupying the mystic realms and worlds. Since the Master God system was born, it had been perfecting itself. In addition to the mission panel at the beginning, there was also a mall panel, a transaction panel, a friend panel, and so on. After the Master God system was born, among the human race, all living beings below the Khanate Taoist priests would automatically be bound to a subsystem of the Master God system. It was a form of identification. P.S. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. Chapter 876. In addition to the human clan, Feng Zichen also gave the innate Taoist priests of the human clan a part of the authority of the main god system so that they could issue missions for the ordinary human clan members to complete and earn merit points. Otherwise, how could there be so many missions for the human clan members to complete? It was also because of the existence of the main god system that merit points became more and more important. It could even be said that in the eyes of the human clan, merit points were more precious than merit points. In the human clan, as long as you had enough merit points, you could do almost anything. Even if you wanted to reach the realm of the innate Taoist priests, as long as you had enough merit points, it was not impossible. The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors would appear in person to bless you, condense the origin of heaven and earth for you, and help you go against the innate and reach the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests. From this, it could be seen how precious merit points were. As for the Daluo Taoist priests that Feng Zichen used to establish his authority, he did not really violate Feng Zichen's orders. Since he had reached the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests, he was not very smart, but he was not stupid enough to go against Feng Zichen and the human clan. The reason why the Daluo Taoist priests was killed by Feng Zichen to establish his authority was purely because there was a problem with his identity. It was unknown which great medium he was, but Feng Zichen found out about it. Feng Zichen was a very smart person. After finding out that there was a problem with the Daluo Taoist priests, he did not say anything. He just silently monitored him and directly used him to establish his authority when needed. This move could first eliminate a spy, and second, it could serve as a warning to others and enhance his authority. It could be said that he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. The death of the innate Taoist priests was not worthless. At least, he had helped Feng Zichen a lot. According to the agreement between those powerful beings and Feng Zichen, as long as they were reincarnated into the human race, they would be part of the human race. They would not be brought into the human race when they were born, and they would not be brought into the human race when they died. They would come in clean and leave clean. Therefore, Zhou Yan was also a human. It was also his identity as a human that allowed him to arrive at Emperor City without any obstructions. The mortal Emperor City had all sorts of restrictions on the foreign races, but not on the human race. As long as they were willing, any mortal of the human race could come to Renhuang City. After all, every year, many people would come to mortal Emperor City to pay their respects to the relics of the human clan's ancestors. If he refused to let these people in, it would be unavoidably unreasonable. Therefore, mortal Emperor City had no restrictions on humans. They could come and go as they pleased. Anyway, mortal Emperor City was big enough. No matter how many cultivators came, it would be able to accommodate them. After arriving at mortal Emperor City, Zhou Yan carefully tidied up his messy clothes before walking towards the treasure room. As soon as he entered the treasure room, before Zhou Yan saw Dao ancestor Heng Jun, he first saw Lai Ko, who was reading seriously. As one of the 3,000 secular guests of Purple Cloud Palace, Zhou Yan had no reason not to recognize Lai Ko. When he saw Lai Ko, Zhou Yan was stunned at first. Then, as if he had thought of something, his face lit up with joy. Since Lai Ko is here, doesn't that mean my guess was right? Teacher is really here? Thinking of this, Zhou Yan was undoubtedly more excited. Greetings, Brother Lai Yu. After a while, Zhou Yan suppressed his surging emotions. He first bowed towards Lai Ko, then asked softly, Brother, is teacher here? Lai Ko nodded, pointed inside, and said, Teacher is inside. If you want to see him, then go ahead. Zhou Yan cupped his hands at Lai Ko and replied, Then, Poor Wei will go and see teacher first. After seeing teacher, I'll come and talk to you in detail. With that, Zhou Yan turned and walked into the treasure room with big strides. In front of a quiet room, Zhou Yan stood outside the door. He did not dare to enter rashly. Instead, he knocked on the door respectfully. When the door opened and a "come in," he took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and walked in. Looking at the Taoist who looked exactly like Taishang Lao Jun, Zhou Yan did not understand why Dao ancestor Heng Jun would appear in the world with Taishang Lao Jun's appearance. However, he still shouted respectfully, Disciple greets teacher. It had already reached this stage, Chiu. Of course, Zhou Yan would not foolishly think that the Taoist in front of him was Taishang Lao Jun. Not to mention Taishang Lao Jun, even if Taishang Lao Jun himself came, he would not let Lai Ko wait outside the door like a disciple. You came to see Poor Wei because you have doubts in your heart? Dao ancestor Heng Jun continued to stare at the book in his hand and asked without raising his head. Dao ancestor Heng Jun could be rude, but Zhou Yan could not. He continued to respectfully reply, Teacher, I do have some doubts in my heart. There are still many unsolved problems regarding the Tao of Yin and Yang and the 5 elements. Shaking his head, Dao ancestor Heng Jun put away the book in his hand, led Zhou Yan out of the quiet room, and walked upstairs. Without stopping, Dao ancestor Hongjun led Zhou Yan to the highest floor of the treasure room. After arriving here, Dao ancestor Hongjun stopped and used his dermic powers to take out a few jade books from the bookshelf. Some of these innate jade books were written by Great Emperor Ziwei, while some were written by Great Emperor Gaochen. They are all top-notch innate Taoist scriptures, and they also explain the Tao of Yin and Yang and the 5 elements. Take a look at them first. Perhaps they can solve the doubts in your heart. Dao ancestor Hongjun handed these jade books to Zhou Yan and said. Out of curiosity, Zhou Yan took over these innate jade books and habitually looked at the titles of the books. He saw the following words written on them: General Outline of 5 Elements Witches, General Outline of 5 Elements Sacred Beasts, Pangu's Theory of Evolution of 5 Elements, General Outline of 5 Elements Celestial Emperor, General Outline of Evolution of the Sun, General Outline of Changes in Pangu's Eyes. After taking a few glances, he was sure that it was the innate Taoist scriptures that he could not write. Not to mention anything else, just the 5 Elements Grand Sorcerer outline. If one did not come into contact with the 5 Elements Grand Sorcerer, it would be impossible to write it. There was also the 5 Elements Celestial Emperor Grand Outline, which was about the 5 celestial emperors of the human race led by the Eastern Green Emperor. These 5 celestial emperors operated the 5 elements of heaven and earth and had been celestial emperors for a total of 5 million years. Their Tao could indeed explain the Tao of the 5 elements. Similarly, if one did not come into contact with the 5 elements celestial emperor, they would not be able to write such an innate Taoist scripture. There was also the Sun and Moon Evolution Grand Outline and Pangu's Eyes Grand Outline. These were top-notch Taoist scriptures that explained the Tao of Yin and Yang. If one did not study the Sun and Moon for many years, they would not be able to write such innate Taoist scriptures. There was also the Taoist scripture about Pangu. This was the innate Taoist scripture that only the authentic Pangu could write. Well, they were all top-notch innate Taoist scriptures. Naturally, Zhou Yan could not write them. Moreover, from the names of these scriptures, one could tell that these scriptures were very useful to him. It was a field that he had never come into contact with before. Thank you for your guidance, teacher. After accepting these innate Taoist scriptures, Zhou Yan thanked Dao ancestor Hongjun. However, Dao ancestor Hongjun shook his head and did not accept his gratitude. Instead, he said, these scriptures are all from the human clan. If you want to thank someone, you should thank the human clan. Why are you thanking the poor Wei, an old Taoist? Zhou Yan came to a realization and said, indeed, I should thank the human clan. I owe the human emperor a big favor and will definitely repay it in the future. However, without your guidance, how could I come here and find these innate Taoist scriptures? You. Shaking his head, Dao ancestor Hongjun could not help but laugh. It was not Dao ancestor Hongjun's fault for doing him a favor. It was because most of the problems that his disciples had to face could be found in the human clan. Since that was the case, why should he waste his breath to solve his disciples' doubts? Wouldn't it be better to just find the innate Taoist scriptures that they needed and give them to them so that they could comprehend them themselves? This way, it would save him a lot of trouble. Although doing so would make these people owe Feng Zichen a big favor. However, Dao ancestor Hongjun did not care at all. He could use this matter to let his disciples realize that the Great Tao was difficult to find. Anyone who wanted to achieve the Great Tao had to pay a price. After obtaining the Taoist scriptures, Zhou Yan stayed in the treasure room and began to comprehend the innate Taoist scriptures like Lai Ko. As for the merit points needed to borrow these innate Taoist scriptures, they did not need to hand them over. This was because these merit points were nothing compared to the favor that they owed Feng Zichen. Of course, there was no need to be calculative. It was also at this time that many smart people in the human emperor city saw through Feng Zichen's hint and knew that the new manager of the treasure room was a hidden expert. After all, they were all cultivators. Not many of them were not smart. Some things could be understood with a hint. Therefore, recently, many human cultivators were eager to go to the treasure room, hoping to receive the guidance of this unknown expert, the Tao ancestor. It could be considered luck. However, the guidance of the Tao ancestor was obviously not so easy to obtain. In the past few months, countless human prodigies had gone to the treasure room, but none of them were lucky enough to receive the guidance of the Tao ancestor. However, some smart people noticed the extraordinariness of Lai Ko and Zhou Yan and seriously asked them for guidance on the difficulties they encountered in cultivation. As a result, they received a lot of guidance from them. This could be considered a great opportunity. Although Lai Ko and Zhou Yan's strength was no longer there, they were still great divine masters. As peerless existences in the half-step primordial chaos realm, they could even give guidance to the Taoist priests, let alone the human prodigies. To be able to receive their guidance, these human experts could be considered lucky. While Zhou Yan was heading to the human emperor city, in the distant North Sea Demon Palace, Patriarch Kunpeng suddenly fell into the deepest level of enlightenment. A wisp of innate true spirit escaped from his body and turned into a butterfly. It flapped its wings and crossed the endless mountains and seas from the distant North Sea to the human emperor city. When the butterfly arrived outside the human emperor city, it suddenly turned into a Taoist with fluttering sleeves. He was unusually free and easy, and his temperament was even more unrestrained. This Taoist called himself Zhuangzhou. His origin and strength were unknown. He sang a Taoist song and strode toward the human emperor city. In the past, Zhuangzhou dreamed of butterflies, vivid butterflies. He said that he was suitable for Ji and did not know Zhou. Suddenly, he felt that he was suitable for Zhou. He did not know that Zhou's dream was butterflies, and the butterfly's dream was Zhou. There must be a difference between Zhou and butterflies. This is called materialization. Zhuangzhou dreamed of butterflies? No, it's Kunpeng. Why did he come to the human emperor city? Previously, when many great divine masters signed the agreement with Feng Zichen, Patriarch Kunpeng was not included. The reason was very simple. Behind Patriarch Kunpeng stood an ancient innate divine master. It was the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, who was of the same generation as Tao ancestor Hongjun. With his help, Patriarch Kunpeng did not need to split his divine consciousness to enter the human race to achieve Tao. Unexpectedly, in the end, he still split a wisp of divine consciousness and came to the human race. However, Feng Zichen did not stop Patriarch Kunpeng's real spirit incarnation and did not let him enter the human emperor city. Patriarch Kunpeng was Feng Zichen's ally, and they signed the alliance agreement under the witness of the Great Tao. Unless the Great Tao decayed, or Patriarch Kunpeng's strength surpassed the Great Tao. Otherwise, Patriarch Kunpeng could only be Feng Zichen's ally for the rest of his life, standing firmly on the same side with him. If he violated the alliance agreement, the Great Tao would never let Patriarch Kunpeng go. Not to mention that there was an extremely ancient primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian behind him. Even if there was a chaos demon god behind him, it would be useless. He would definitely end up extremely miserable. Therefore, Patriarch Kunpeng could be said to be Feng Zichen's staunch ally. His attitude towards allies was naturally different from other great divine masters. If there was no agreement, then there was no agreement. After all, the two of them were allies. Feng Zichen did not want to argue with him. After Zhuangzhou entered the human emperor city, he followed the feeling in his heart and came all the way to the treasure room. He saw Tao ancestor Hongjun, who was fake Taishang Laojun, and began to ask him. As usual, Tao ancestor Hongjun found him a lot of connate Taoist scriptures and asked him to slowly comprehend them. Just like that, time passed by minute. Not long after, about 100 years, the three realms suddenly shook. 5 earth-shattering auras suddenly spread out and swept across the entire 3 realms. Under the impact of these 5 auras, the radiance of the sun and the moon dimmed a lot. Even the operation of the rules of heaven and earth was affected. Someone was going to achieve Tao. And it was not just one person, but 5 people achieving Tao at the same time. 5 people achieving Tao in a day. Was this a repeat of the ancient times when 5 saints were born in a day? It was also the phenomenon of 5 people achieving Tao at the same time. The moment it appeared, Feng Zichen suddenly felt that the destiny of the human race was different. It was constantly rolling and giving birth to endless phenomena. This was the sign of the birth of the human king. After Jiang Huan, a new human king was born in the human race. It was only Duke Jin, Ji1. After Guanzhong passed away, the national power of the state of Qi weakened day by day. On the other hand, Duke Jin was supported by the incarnations of the 5 great divine masters. The national power grew stronger day by day and seized the hegemony from the state of Qi, becoming the new generation of overlords. It was also because of this that the destiny of the various countries shifted and gathered on Duke Jin, Ji1, causing his status to improve further. He rose from the duke to the human king. The 5 great divine masters who supported Ji1 were also able to enter the long river of time and space at the moment of Ji1's promotion. They saw the future that they wanted to see and comprehended it. They took the crucial step and cultivated to the realm of primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. However, like Guanzhong, if they wanted to truly achieve Dao, they still needed the incarnation of the human race to die of old age and sever their karma with the human race. Only then could they truly achieve perfection. Chapter 877. These 5 Grand Masters reaching the Tao at the same time had a great significance to the other Grand Masters. This was because they proved that when it came to assisting the mortal monarch, there was no difference between one person and many. As long as they were successful, they could all reach the Tao. Therefore, after these 5, even more Grand Masters appeared and joined the ranks of assisting the vassal state lords. Not long after Duke Ji1 became the mortal monarch, the 5 virtuous paragons who assisted him died one after another. Because of this, the power of the Jin state gradually declined. At this time, the state of Qin rose. With the help of the virtuous paragons, it gradually became prosperous and defeated the powerful state of Jin to become the new overlord. After the state of Qin, the state of Chu rose. After Chu, the state of Wu rose with the help of the virtuous paragons. In a short period of time, the overlords of the Central Plains changed constantly. One after another, mortal monarchs were born, and several grand masters reached the Tao. Under this influence, the laws of the world became even more active. Even the natural spirit energy became denser. The vassal states were not peaceful, and neither were the 100 schools. The school of Taoism came out from the human race's treasury. With countless capable people, it became one of the top powers in the world. The school of Moism was righteous and loved impartiality. It gathered a large number of supporters and had great prestige among the lower class of the human race. It was also a power that could not be ignored. The school of Confucianism taught without discrimination. There were even rumors that the master of the school of Confucianism, Ziru, was an old friend of the mortal emperor and the reincarnation of a human immortal master. With this addition, the already powerful school of Confucianism became the number 1 power of the 100 schools. The school of legalism said that without rules, nothing could be accomplished. It was also very popular among the rulers and flourished in the various states. It was also a great power of the 100 schools. Outside of these schools, there were also famous scholars who were very eloquent and had the ability to reverse black and white. Even the school of Confucianism, which was known for its eloquence, was rendered speechless by their words. The school of medicine came out and cured countless people. Although it did not become a great power, it was still quite prestigious. After the school of medicine, there was the school of agriculture. This sect was not good at martial arts and was good at farming. However, they not only planted grains, but also various spirit medicines and immortal fruits. They could also breed various rare and strange beasts. As the saying goes, food is the god of the people. Anything related to food and soil is the specialty of agriculture. During the rise of the Wu kingdom, a saint from the military school was born. He explained the Tao of the world and supported the weak Wu kingdom to become an overlord. Because of this, the school of the military even surpassed Confucianism and became the number 1 school of thought. However, after the saint of the military school passed away, the school of the military gradually declined. Its number 1 position was replaced by the school of Taoism. However, the Taoist school did not prosper for long. Not long after, a Taoist expert established another school, creating the Yin-Yang school of thought. This caused the Taoist school of thought to be greatly weakened, and the number one school was replaced by the Confucian school of thought. Not long after Confucianism became the number one school of thought, many outstanding disciples joined other schools. Some joined the school of legalism and became one of its pillars. Some people joined the school of Moism and became the first anti-Confucian. There were also people who entered Taoism. They were virtuous like water and did not compete with anything. There were also many Confucian disciples in the school of agriculture and the school of medicine. Not long after Confucianism declined, the school of vertical and horizontal disciples joined the world and became the guests of the various kingdoms. In an instant, the school of vertical and horizontal's power greatly increased, replacing Confucianism as the number one school of thought. Unfortunately, not long after the school of vertical and horizontal dominated the 100 schools of thought, the school of legalism rose up and became the political representative of the commoners. In terms of politics, they could be said to be unrivaled. They emphasized, don't be too close, don't be too lowly, and must be dealt with according to the law. The strict law became a tool to rule the country. The commoners enjoyed equal rights, and the country became more and more prosperous. However, because the school of legalism's philosophy of not being too close and not being too lowly, it clashed with the school of Confucianism's philosophy of not being too close and not being too lowly. As a result, an intense conflict broke out between the two. As soon as the two sides met, they would have an intense debate, and neither side could convince the other. In the end, it evolved to the point that in countries with legalism, the school of Confucianism would definitely be suppressed by the school of legalism. Similarly, in countries with school of Confucianism, the school of legalism would definitely be suppressed. As the two sides clashed, the school of Taoism rose up in the chaos. Afterward, the school of legalism and Confucianism worked together to suppress the school of Taoism. It was also at this time that the school of the military gained a new lease of life, and it overshadowed the other schools of thought. Not long after the school of the military rose up, the school of vertical and horizontal also rose up, and it was no weaker than the school of Confucianism. There were many countries in the central God province. Some were strong and some were weak, and there were endless conflicts between them. This kind of environment was suitable for the school of the military and the school of vertical and horizontal to survive. As long as there was a chance, the two could rise up at any time and become the number one school of thought. As more and more powerful cultivators' avatars entered the scene, the various schools of thought in the central God province contended with each other. Each school had their own strategy and ideas of how to rule the country. In order to defeat the other schools of thought, each school of thought more or less absorbed the theories of the other schools of thought, either to attack the other or to make up for the flaws in their own theories. However, every school of thought had its own specialties and strengths, as well as its weaknesses. None of them could be said to be perfect. It was also at this time that someone proposed to combine Confucianism, and method of nomenclature, and integrate all the schools of thought. They wanted to combine the theories of the various schools of thought and create their own school of miscellany. The school of miscellany specialties were gathering the virtues of Confucianism, and method of nomenclature. Although the school of miscellany focused on Tao and gathered the theories of many schools of thought, through gathering the opinions of various schools of thought, they carried out their political intentions and academic ideas, so they could also be called a school of thought. However, there was no doubt that ever since the school of miscellany was born, it was disliked by the other schools of thought. They believed that it was a thief who stole the ideas of the other schools of thought and made it their own. At this moment, in the kingdom of Lu, Mozi and Confucian sages suddenly fought in the wilderness because of their differences in ideals. Both of them had the bodies of mortals, and there was not a shred of mana in their bodies. However, because they still had their cultivation from their previous lives, the ripples produced when they fought were enough to make the Daluo Taoist priests tremble in fear. However, the powerful ripples did not cause the slightest bit of damage to the surrounding mountains, rivers, plants, flowers, birds, fishes, and insects. This was because the battle between the two was a battle of ideals, a battle of the Tao. Therefore, when the two fought, they competed in their understanding of the heavenly Tao and their control of the laws of heaven and earth, not the strength of their mana. Because of this, the battle between the two, in the eyes of outsiders, was just an ordinary bickering. However, in the eyes of those with high cultivation, it was abnormally terrifying. Conformist sages. At a certain moment, Mosey used the school of Mosey's ability, and the laws of heaven and earth around him suddenly condensed into one, surrounding Mosey and forming an absolute defense. At this moment, Confucian sage's ability came crashing down. The passing of time is like the passing of time. Unwilling to give up day and night. This sentence was originally said by Confucian sages on the river, and the passing of time was like the river, flowing forward regardless of day and night. However, under the augmentation of the Confucian mystical ability, the absolute law of words, this sentence directly turned into a powerful time mystical ability. In the blink of an eye, the sea turned into mulberry fields, and endless time passed. Unfortunately, the school of Mosey's conformist sages were not weak. No matter how much time flowed, it could not break Mosey's ability. However, the school of Mosey was good at defense and not good at offense. Although Confucian sages could not break Mosey's ability, Mosey could not break Confucian sage's ability and hurt him. After the two were in a deadlock for a few days, Mosey suddenly stopped his ability and turned to leave. However, before he left, Mosey said, "Zero, although I could not convince you this time, you could not convince me either. Since that is the case, let's wait until the next gathering of the 100 families, and then we will decide who is better." After he finished speaking, Mosey left. Yes, he left in the form of teleportation. Although he was a mortal, with Mosey's realm, he had already become one with heaven and earth. Wherever he stood, he was the master of heaven and earth, and he could use the power of heaven and earth for his own use. This method was far superior to the Daluo Taoist priests. It was just teleportation, and it was too easy. As for the gathering of the 100 families mentioned by Mosey, it was suggested by a Taoist master. That person said, everyone reincarnated into the human race, not to fight to the death, but to attain Tao. There is no need to become enemies. Therefore, he suggested that everyone gather together every once in a while and exchange what they'd obtained. If by any chance they obtained some gains, they would be able to gain instant comprehension and become a Chaos Golden Immortal, and it would be a good story. This Taoist expert's suggestion was immediately approved by everyone. Just as he said, they were not enemies. Putting this matter aside, everyone was from the Xian sect, and they had all listened to the Taoist master's teachings. They were fellow cultivators and good friends. There was indeed no need to fight to the death. Finding time to exchange what they have learned would be more helpful for them to attain Tao. If they were inspired, it would not be a joke to attain Tao immediately. There was a precedent for this. Lai Ko, Zhou Yan, and Zhuang Zhou discussed Tao in the treasure room. They discussed the Khanate 5 manifestations and the mysteries of Yin and Yang and the 5 elements. During the discussion, Lai Ko gained something and directly achieved enlightenment. He immediately became the origin Daluo Jingxian. Who knew how many people were envious of such a situation? At the same time, Lai Ko's experience also allowed the other great mystiques to see the benefits of discussing the Tao. They would really benefit from it. Because of this, the gathering of the 100 families went so smoothly. My Confucian Tao is still not perfected after all. After Mosey left, the Confucian looked at the place where they had fought and could not help but be lost in thought. This battle seemed to be a draw, but the scholar knew that he had lost this battle. His opponent was only defending, but he could not break through his opponent's defense even after using all his strength. If this was not a loss, then what was? However, although he had lost, the Confucian was not discouraged. His Confucian Tao was not perfected, but Mosey's Tao of Mo had long been perfected. His original body had also cultivated the origin Tao fruit not long ago. It was normal that he was inferior to Mosey. If his Confucian Tao was not perfected, how could he defeat his opponent? However, when the Confucian's Confucian Tao was perfected, it was still unknown who would win if the two of them fought again. Let's go. It's time to meet the Tao ancestor. After recovering from his thoughts, the Confucian turned and walked in the direction of Renhuang City. He still had many doubts about the Confucian Tao, so he planned to ask the Tao ancestor. Feng Zichen was indeed inferior to Tao ancestor Hongjun. This was an indisputable fact. Dao ancestor Hongjun was a genuine Wuji Daluo Jingxian, while Feng Zichen was only a origin Daluo Jingxian. The gap of a large realm was not just a matter of words. Although Feng Zichen was confident that he could surpass Dao ancestor Hongjun if given enough time, that was also the future. It did not affect the fact that he was inferior to Dao ancestor Hongjun now. Feng Zichen would not deny that he was inferior to Dao ancestor Hongjun. Moreover, it was not shameful to ask Dao ancestor Hongjun for advice. It was not the first time Feng Zichen had done so. Not to mention, only Dao ancestor Hongjun could give Ziru the answer to his doubts about the Confucian Dao. That was because Dao ancestor Hongjun was the heavenly Dao. In the entire untainted world, there was no one who understood the heavenly Dao better than him. As for the Confucian Dao, it was called the Confucian Dao, but it was actually the righteous Dao of heaven. That's right. In this reincarnation, Xianqing had changed his great Dao to comprehend the heavenly Dao. No, that's not right. It was not strict to say that he had changed his cultivation. Strictly speaking, Xianqing had sublimated the Dao that he had cultivated, making his intention higher. When Ziru was Xianqing in his previous life, he cultivated the Dao of the Nine Heavens Clear Qi, also known as the Dao of the Connate Clear Qi. He specialized in cultivating the Connate Clear Qi. After Xianqing reincarnated as Ziru, he sublimated his Dao of the Connate Clear Qi and upgraded it to the Dao of Heaven. There was a saying that when Pangas split open the sky, the clear Qi rose and the turbid Qi fell. After the clear Qi rose, it became the sky. The clear Qi referred to the Connate Clear Qi. In other words, the Connate Clear Qi was the sky. Now, Ziru had turned the Connate Clear Qi into the Dao of Heaven. It was an action that was in line with the Connate Clear Qi. The Dao of Heaven was the righteous Dao of heaven and earth. It symbolized the righteous side of the heavenly Dao and was opposite to the turbid Qi. In other words, the Dao of Heaven was related to the Dao of Heaven. There was no one more suitable than Dao Ancestor when it came to matters related to the Dao of Heaven. Dao Ancestor was the Dao of Heaven. No one understood himself better than him. However, it was also because of the upgrade of the Connate Clear Qi that Xianqing's cultivation method was no longer suitable for Ziru. Similarly, Ziru was afraid that Xianqing's understanding of the heavenly Dao would affect him. Hence, he abandoned everything that belonged to Xianqing. He abandoned everything. Power, status, divine spells, laws, and even cultivation. He came to the heavenly Dao with a new attitude. Hence, when Ziru was born, countless great mediums felt it. The heavenly Dao shook. His qi swallowed the universe and swallowed the essence of all things in the universe. It was unparalleled and unprecedented. He could be said to be a natural saint. However, perhaps because he abandoned everything that belonged to Xianqing, Ziru had never cultivated. To be more precise, he had never cultivated his Dharma power. Now, Ziru only cared about the state. He only wanted to cultivate the state. Other than the state, he did not ask for anything else. Whether it was profound Dharma power or a strong physical body, he did not ask for them. Ziru's attitude made the disciples of the Jie sect anxious. If he did not cultivate, when would he be able to return to the peak of the great fulfillment of the sage to be? If he did not return to the peak, he would not be able to refine the origin Dao fruit and cultivate to the realm of the origin Daluo Jingxian.